Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming this evening, being with us here at the North Penn School District. This is a meeting called by the Board of School Directors, February 15th, 1996. At this time, we join each and every one of us for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thomas Clemens, Board President, is away on vacation this evening. He is vacationing with his family in Vermont, and I think he's also taking the defeat of the Penfields wrestling team at the hands of Pembroke. I think he's taking it quite bad. So I think that's another reason he's not here tonight. But he'll get over it for the March meetings. This meeting is our regularly scheduled official action meeting when we will vote on matters which have been discussed in previous meetings. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes this evening. This limit will permit time for all those who wish to speak to the board to do so. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. And this is in reference to board policy 8344.2. So, at this time, we'll need recommend the approval of the minutes of the 711th meeting held on 1/18/96 is circulated. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
A motion by Mr. Good, John.
Yes.
Is this going to be a long night, Mr. Schoen?
My fault.
We have a motion by Mr. Mosey and a second by Mr. Hill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed nay. Carried. Recommend the approval of minutes of 712th meeting held on 2/18/96 is circulated. May I have a motion? May I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Scher, a second by Mr. Mosey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. It's passed. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin committee reports. We are most fortunate again to have with us Dr. Michael Irwin from the North Monco VOTEC. He has brought a team of faculty and experts with him. He's here to talk to us about plans on the expansion being organized at the North Monco VOTEC. And at this time, Dr. Irwin, we welcome you. Dr. Bose welcomes you, and introduce us to your folks tonight.
Okay, I'd like to introduce first Mr. Nelson Newton, who teaches building technology at our school.
Dr. Irwin, would you use the microphone?
I'd like to introduce Mr. Nelson Newton, our building tech teacher. Also, the architects who've been working on the plan that I'll be presenting this evening, Mr. Bob Kelly, and Jay Clough from Dicer Road and Wolf, and also Steve Moynihan, who's going to be presenting some information about finances from Dauphin and Bradbury. Due to the fact that we have a lot of data that I'd like to share with you to support the project, I'd like to use the overhead. I apologize for any inconvenience. This evening I'd like to talk with you about a proposal to renovate and expand the facility at North Monco. And this information that I'll be presenting this evening is based on a feasibility study that was commissioned by the Joint Operating Committee in May of 1995. Tonight specifically, I'll be discussing the rationale for the project, the scope of the proposal, a financial breakdown, and answer any questions that you may have. I'd like to begin by first talking about the project timeline. We began in April of '95 with discussions with the Joint Operating Committee regarding the condition of the facility and some concerns that we had regarding space. In June of 1995, the Joint Operating Committee authorized the hiring of Dice Road Wolf to conduct a feasibility study. In September of '95, the report was submitted to the Joint Operating Committee for consideration. In October, a revised plan was accepted, and in January of '96, we began meeting with each of the individual homeschool boards to present the plan and ask for board action as to whether or not they support or reject the plan. It's important to note that this project requires all participating schools to support it in order for it to occur. I'd be asking this board in the very near future to take action on this proposal, and if it is approved, and if all 5 districts do approve it, we will move to the next step, which would be looking in sometime in March to submit a financial plan for approval that will allow us to begin the project. This project, if it begins in the spring of '98, we're looking for, in the spring of '96, we're looking at completion date of spring of '98. It's a 2-year project. Thus far, I've met with 4 of our participating school boards, and at this point, Souderton and Perkiomen Valley have formally approved the plan. Wissahickon and Methacton will be voting on it within the next 2 weeks. The rationale for the project. Probably foremost of the list is the condition of the existing physical plant. We have a facility which is 30 years old. We have mechanical systems that are still original pieces of equipment. Our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system is worn and deteriorated. We have electrical switchgear which is obsolete. We're unable to find repair parts when we do have failure. We also have a shortage of adequately sized instructional space for a number of programs due to increasing enrollment. We have 15 classes that are affected by this. Power and Transportation Cluster, Health and Human Services Cluster, Culinary Arts, Metal Trades, and the Building Trades clusters. We also have inadequate laboratory space for the diesel program, which inhibits our ability to get ASE certification. ASE is Automotive Service Excellence. Students in our diesel program can receive the ASE certification if we have that. And basically, in order to get ASE certification, we must be able to park a tractor trailer in our lab. At this point in time, we do not have adequate space to do that. This program is a very popular program. Our afternoon session has 33 students enrolled. This program also has perhaps the highest placement rate of any of the programs in our school. We place over 90% of our graduates in the trade. We also do not have storage space or receiving area for the school. Over the past couple of years, due to the increased enrollment and also due to the changes we made to the layout of our building, we have basically taken whatever space was available and converted it into classroom space. And finally, we have inadequate space for the maintenance staff. At present, they're working out of a 20 by 20 foot area. I would like to talk a few minutes about the primary reason for the addition, specifically enrollment. If you were to look at our facility, in talking with Mr. Ed Tapp was the school's original principal. The school was built to serve 860 students. Our current enrollment is approximately 820 students, and if this building project is approved, if we do build the addition, we're looking at a building capacity of 1,100 plus students. The reason why we used that figure was because we're looking at not increasing the number of programs. We are not hiring additional staff, but with this additional space, we will be able to accommodate 1,100 students. The reason for the plus sign is the fact that with the design of this addition, we will have the capability of expanding and creating additional instructional space, which would allow us to accept more students. I'd just like to take a few minutes and talk about a historical perspective on the enrollment. If you were to look at enrollment information over the past few years, it's kind of interesting to point out that in 1992-93, our school bottomed out. Lowest enrollment that we ever recorded came in at 562 students. And this is based on enrollment information that we submit to the Department of Education based on October 1st enrollments for each year. It was also about the same point in time when we've made major curriculum revisions at our school. It was at that point in time where we implemented clustering, where we took our 23 individual programs and broke them into 7 clusters. It It was also the first year for our Pennsylvania Youth Apprenticeship Program. This program started in 92-93 with a grand total of 4 students. This year we have 57 students enrolled, and the interest in this program is climbing. This program has also contributed to a lack of instructional space because of the fact that we deliver the academics with this program. The students are in our school 2 days a week, 3 full days a week for their instruction in their academics, and they're out on the work site the remaining 2 days a week. So as a result, we had to get more instructional space in our school. And we also have a tech prep program that we started and initiated approximately 93, 94, and this year we have 169 students officially enrolled in tech prep programs. When we start to project our enrollment, we used a lot of historical data to do this. I contacted each of the districts and received projected enrollments from each of our participating school districts. We identified the population of students that we can serve, the students who would be in grades 9, 10, and 11, and 12. And basically, we looked at what the typical percentage of participation has been in the past. Through the 80s and the 90s, it was about 11%. So we used that figure to calculate what our enrollment will be in our school based on historical participation rates. And what we're looking at is basically a table. If you notice, the floor of this table is 860 students. That would be the capacity of our school. Next year, we're projecting in excess of 900 students. But you can see by the year 1998-99, we'll be surpassing the 1,000 mark. Now about the actual project. The scope of the proposal, the renovation, would involve a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning upgrade, which includes new air handlers, piping, pumps, and an automatic temperature control system. And in addition to that, new chillers for our air conditioning systems. We're also looking at totally new electrical switchgear and also a plumbing upgrade. At the completion of this renovation, all mechanical systems in our facility will be functioning at maximum efficiency and dependability. And now about the addition. The addition will provide 32,000 square feet of instructional space, a potential for 7,000 square feet of classroom space that we can develop in later years, provides for a technical library, it frees space in the existing building for other programs, and provides maintenance with workspace in a receiving area. You're going to look at the actual layout of the building. The shaded area is the addition. And what's unique about the addition, it's really focused around our building trades area because that's been one of the problems that we've been experiencing, the fact that we don't have enough space in our existing classrooms in the building trades area. But at this end of the building, we would actually have an addition which would allow us to build projects on site. At present, we do not have space at our facility to build a live project. With this addition, we'll have a facility which will have 30-foot high ceiling with an earth floor which would allow us to build manufactured homes or modular classrooms. We would have our carpentry area located in this area. We would also have our masonry program located back in the addition, and we would have a new classroom for diesel. These are the theory rooms that would be located in the center. Because of the building's design, and you can see the model, there will be a mezzanine that will be constructed over the theory rooms, which would allow for an expansion of 7,000 square feet classroom space. There will be a well for an elevator and also 2 stairwells included in this design, so that down the road, if we would want to expand, the space would be available. At the present time, we'll be able to use that for storage. But by moving the building trades at this end of the building, we've created more space in the main building to expand our existing programs and give them more space. Maintenance will receive a new home, and what's interesting is that was their original home when our school was first built. In addition to that, drafting will be moved from our student services area behind the student services offices into a home right within its own cluster. It's part of the metal trades cluster. What's neat about this concept is the fact that we'll be able to integrate those two programs. We'll be able to integrate our drafting program with our machine shop program. Students can actually do computer-assisted design work in the drafting lab and download those files right into our computer numerically controlled metalworking machinery in the machine shop. In addition to this, we're also looking at expanding the welding area so that we can build more live projects in our welding classroom area. Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning would receive a new home, which would be located along an outside wall, which would allow us to do more live work by locating a lot of our heating and cooling equipment, the coils outside where they should be. And in addition to that, we'll be able to move our transitional classroom out of the existing the Pennsylvania Youth Apprenticeship Science classroom. So ultimately, our science room will have a larger area. And you can see any area that's highlighted will be affected by this project. Project costs. The renovation, $2,092,000. The addition, $4.1 million. What's interesting is the financing of this project is the fact that this is different than the way we pay for the operational costs of our school. Our operational costs are based on the percentage of students that attend our school. So if 50% of the students attend our school, they pay 50% of our operating costs. This is different for capital projects. For capital projects, our districts pay a percentage based on their percentage share of the total real estate value of all of our districts combined. So if you were to look at that formula, the breakdown would be as follows. North Penn would pick up 39.88% share of the total project cost. And you can see what the other districts' share would be as well. And if you were to break that down, North Penn's total share of this total project would be $2.4 million. And at this point, I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Moynihan from Dauphin and Bradbury. Mr. Moynihan has worked with us to develop 4 models for financing the project, and he would like to, at this time, review them with you and answer any questions you may have. No.
Thank you, Dr. Irwin. My name is Steve Moynihan with Dauphin and Bradbury. We're acting in the capacity as financial advisors and bond underwriters for the contemplated bond issue that will finance this project. I believe in the information that's been handed out to you, you have a study that is titled Financing Report, North Montco Area Vocational Technical School, School Revenue Bond, Series of 1996 on the cover page. On the inside of the cover page, we present a summary of the 4 options. The 4 options that were being considered for the financing represent repayment plans over a particular number of years. There are repayment options for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years, and for 20 years. And a bond issue is the same as a mortgage. The longer the mortgage, the lower the annual payment or monthly payment, and the trade-off, of course, is the more interest that's paid over the life of the borrowing. So for option number 1, in the case of North Penn, what we were projected for a 5-year repayment plan with interest only during the first 2 years would be, there'd be no requirement in the current year. It would be $37,000 in the next school year, $74,000 in the following year, and then when principal begins to be repaid in the 3rd year through the 8th year, the average payment is $402,000. That's net of the estimated state reimbursement that has been estimated by the architects for the project, so that the total cost for the 5-year repayment plan is $2,124,000 approximately. The same figures are given for the 10, 15, and 20-year plan, just to contrast option number 1 with the 5-year repayment with option number 4, the 20-year repayment. you can see that North Penn's share for the option 4 would be $49,000, $98,000 in the second year, and then average annually for 20 years just under $160,000 for a total of $3,343,000. So that the difference between $2,000,001 and $3,000,003 represents interest that would be paid over a 20-year period rather than a 5-year period. If I give you a sense of where these numbers come from, I'm just going to focus upon option number 1. Going to the next page, we have a bond issue for option number 1 of $5,385,000. Interest earnings would be received on the construction monies prior to disbursement. And we have Perkiomen Valley contribution. Early on in this procedure, the Perkiomen Valley School District indicated a preference to pay cash. So we factored in a gross cash contribution of $530,000. Project costs are estimated to be $5,900,000 with financing costs of $199,000. Capitalized interest, which is simply interest on the bond issue. The bond issue would pay its first 6 months of interest from proceeds of the bonds. No contributions from the participating school districts would be required for that first 6-month period. And then there's an incidental rounding factor. So the $5,900,000 project cost requires a bond issue of $5,385,000 for option number 1. Going back past Schedule 1 and on to Schedule 1A, we have repayment of the bond issue, the $5,385,000. It's, once again, interest only, as for the entire bond, for interest only during the first year of $221,000. In the next year, it's, once again, it's interest only, $221,000. And then you have principal beginning to be repaid in the 3rd year through the 8th year, and it averages approximately $1,190,000 during that 5-year period. The interest costs, when you average those rates, which are range from 3.90% to 4.30%, is 4.24%. And when you factor in the financing costs, the all-in cost is about 5.07%, just slightly less than 5.1% for all-in borrowing cost over a 5-year period. I'd like to bring you back to Schedule number 1 to show you how the costs are divided up. We mentioned that Perkiomen Valley's contribution of $530,000. That would then be in lieu of annual debt service. So the annual debt service, which was developed in the previous schedule, Schedule 1A, is just set forth again here. Capitalized interest, mentioned in the first 6 months of interest, is paid from the bond issue. Nothing is required from the participating school districts. So that the amount that the net debt service, state reimbursement on this particular rate of 23% for option number 1, as estimated, would apply to the net debt service after capitalized interest. And then the debt service after state reimbursement is then divided between the school districts, so that for North Penn in the first year we have the $37,000, next year $74,000, and then approximately $402,000 for the next 5 years. That's how we get the numbers that are on the summary page. And I'll bring you back to Schedule I, which is the first one behind the cover page. Just to recap, that based upon the current financing plan, for option number 1, it's approximately $37,000 for the next school year, $74,000 for the following school year, $402,000 for 5 years thereafter, for a total of $2,124,000. Those are the costs of the bond issue. I know that we've had questions in prior presentations. Well, what if we elected to do the same thing that Perkiomen Valley did and make a cash contribution? Based upon option number 1, we've estimated that the cash contribution for North Penn School District would be $2,353,000. and that would then be reimbursed at an effective 23% for a net contribution under the option number 1 scenario, which has 23% reimbursement of $1,812,000 as a net contribution after the estimated state reimbursement. In making this presentation, oftentimes it's useful to look at a break-even point. If the school district can make, on average, over the next 8 years, 5.10% on its money, it, in financial terms, is better off borrowing money from the bond market, investing your own money, and earning the difference. If the reinvestment rate was less than 5.10, you might want to pay cash instead of participating in the bond issue. That's been a fast summary through this. I'd be glad to answer any questions on the financing report that the board members may have.
First of all, before we go to that, Michael, do you have any more presentation to give on this subject matter? It's just the two of you. Okay. Can this microphone be heard? Can I be heard from here? I don't think this one's working. One fell. I think we're about to share it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the board, why don't we start here to the left with questions this way. Mr. Mosey, do you have any questions? Further, Dr. Irwin? Mrs. Krieger?
Not at this time.
Mr. Hill? One moment, Mr. Sherr. Mr. Hill?
No, I thought it was a fine presentation. I've heard it previously to a degree. The financing is interesting. I mean, there's a lot of numbers very fast there. But I guess what you're saying is if we get somebody to guarantee us that we can make more than 5% on our money, it's better to get the bond up front, invest our own money, and then pay you as we go along.
That's correct.
Okay, can you guarantee we'll get 5%? No, that's a catch-22 that we have to make a decision. That decision has to be made by when would we have to make that decision?
Actually, with the plan for, how would you say, the actual proposal, the board would be asked to make a decision based to support the project.
Yeah,
once that's approved, then I will be working with the superintendents and the business managers, and we'll sit down and devise a plan, a financial package that would be coming back to this board for approval. And we would be looking to do that probably sometime in March.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Allen.
No, I've heard it before. Just as a point of interest, if we pay cash, it's almost $7 million, if anybody's interested. It would be a $7 million hit at one time to pay this off in cash with no further financing of the project, which is a number I've been wanting to hear. But other than that, nice presentation. Thank you.
Mrs. Sherr.
I'd only like to ask about the plans. I've been following this as it's reported from other school districts and many different newspapers. If we went through, is there a food court inside as a part of the renovation project? Because I don't see it here.
No, we do not have a food court that's in that plan. We have, during the school day, we have a lunch program for apprentices that our students operate, and they've been looking at the possibility of putting in a food court, but that would be something that we would do, most of it in-house, and it would probably be included in a budget that would be submitted, but at this point, it was not part of this proposal.
Okay, it's not a part of
No.
what construction we're dealing with
No.
now? Because I was wondering if there was a direction towards moving towards full-time students, such as you have your PIAP, in which you take in the academics, and therefore they're not shifting from their home
Right, we
school.
serve approximately 50 to 60 lunches a day.
Dr. Irwin, could you tell me approximately how many students do you have from North Penn? Do you know approximately?
Yeah, approximately
About 50?
400 students.
About
And
50.
we have about 115 from the junior high, the balance coming from the high school.
115 from our junior high this year?
Yes.
Isn't that a kind of a record high coming in
Yes,
from
it
ninth
is.
grade?
In fact, we have more students enrolled at the 9th grade level this year than we have seniors. If you look at our enrollments, it's kind of interesting because you can see how we did have a period of low enrollment, and those students are now graduating from our system. We have this year 100, right now we have about 140 seniors. We've got 247 juniors. Gives you an idea how the population is kind of more at the lower end.
Sounds like your VOTEC may be actually having a faster rate of growth than we are. It's hard to believe, but that's excellent, because as we look through this and evaluate the plan that's being presented, I think we all need to keep in mind that there are students that are now outside our building, getting at least 50% of their education, and in the PIAP program, they're actually receiving their academics as well as their vocational training. Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Schilling.
No questions, but a very good presentation. Thank you.
Mr. White.
No question.
Okay, Dr. Irwin, would you elaborate on how much of this project is going to be done with the children? I understand that you have students that are going to participate in this project if it's approved by all 5 sending districts.
Yes, our students will be involved in lighting, in electrical work in the project. Probably carpentry will be involved in ceiling work. But we've worked with the architects, and we basically looked at the jobs that we just cannot tackle, and those are the jobs that are going to be done with the general contractor. Virtually the whole addition will be done with the general contractor, but our students will be involved with, like I said, the electrical and a lot of lighting.
Yeah, I think that's an opportunity. I didn't want a piece of information I didn't want anybody to miss. As we look at all the numbers and as we look at the details, it's easy to overlook the fact that it's going to be a learning experience for a number of our students in areas of great importance, and it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually build the school in which they will attend, so that's interesting. And sir, if we were in need of you coming back and talking to us closer towards our budget time, closer to our approval, would you be willing to do that?
Yes.
On the financing? You're open to that?
Yes, I would.
Okay, this time I want to open up questions to the cabinet. I know that it's rare that we have Dr. Irwin here. This expansion is a one-time event. I know that there's times the cabinet, Mr. Kelly, that may have a question. While they're here, does anybody in the cabinet wish to?
I've got a lot of questions answered from other business managers about some of the financing.
Mr. Wood?
I spent a considerable amount of time with Dr. Irwin in the early stages of the design.
Okay, very good. Dr. Bose?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank this board for the support, and also Dr. Bond, the high school. You know, a lot of the success of the school is really the result of the support from our participating districts. Thank you very much.
And as an add-on to that, I believe Tech Prep is a program that it is here in North Penn today because of you and Dr. Bond. And you are proof positive that a tech school and a general school can work hand in hand.
Thank you.
Okay, that does not conclude the report on the, thank you, ladies.
Mike?
Thank you.
Okay, North Monco Technical Career Center, continue with the report from the JOC. Mr. Allen or Mr. Mosey?
I think we just had it, didn't we?
Would you like to add on anything?
No, I wouldn't.
The only thing I just wanted to remind you that on the first week in March, we have that, it's the version of their long-range planning option.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a point to be noted, I will attend for all 3 of those days, and Mr. Allen and Mr. Mosey will attend as they can, but there has to be one board member that stays for the entire 3 days. That's in the first week in March. Does that conclude your report, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay, facilities, buildings, and grounds, Mr. Schilling?
Yes, short report. On Monday, February 26, 1996, students at Penndale Middle School occupied a newly renovated annex. The new science labs, choral room, art rooms, and regular classrooms will house activities currently being held in the main building. This process will allow us to begin renovations in those areas we are vacating. Also, each board member received information regarding the recent asbestos abatement quotations. The costs set forth under this document are considerably lower and will help reduce additional abatement costs. That's in the report.
Thank you, Mr. Schilling. Any questions of Mr. Schilling in his report?
No questions, just a comment that since we last had an action meeting was actually when the floods occurred. We've worked hard to keep up with our weather situations, and I don't believe it was ever yet mentioned, thanks to the support staff that had to deal with emergency situations throughout the district. Various buildings as that the flash flooding from the melting snow occurred. Maybe you ought to like to.
I might
John
mention,
Strohwall and the rest.
we did have considerable damage, as many of you know. I tried to outline that as much as I could, and we've been meeting most recently this past week with our insurance carrier so that we can work out any reimbursement that we will get. We had
with the loss of a phase of our three-phase system at the high school, we did lose a considerable number of motors and contactors and fuses and et cetera, and that claim will be sizable. But I had the opportunity to share and commiserate a bit with Dr. Irwin, because they also had that kind of damage, and their damage exceeded ours, interestingly enough, in dollar value. But our insurance carrier has been in contact with us. We have been taking them from building to building. We had some freeze-ups because we lost power in buildings, and it would appear that we will get reimbursed for a considerable amount of our damage.
Mrs. Krieger, you had a follow-up question? Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Schilling. Community Services and Policy, and Mr. Donald Hill, would you also wrap in Municipal Relations under that report?
Yes. There's a number of things I'd like to cover this evening. One of them is that on the agenda this evening is for approval is the agreement between the Enrichment Workshop for Children, operator of our PACE program for child care in our 13 elementary schools. The board committee has been working on this for some period of time and has successfully negotiated what we're presenting tonight for the board's approval, and which will allow us to continue this program for another year, which seems to be a very successful program for the district. Under the policy committee, I want the audience to know, and the board to know, which I think they already do, is that in March we're bringing forth two policies for review in March and for approval at the first reading in March, one on political activity in North Penn schools, and the second one will be the Code of Ethics policy. Both those will be in review in March and for first reading in March. Another committee that I've been chairing has been meeting with Tomenson Township regarding the police services they provide us as related to the high school and other things in that area. We've had one meeting. We've had some very preliminary discussions. We exchanged our needs and their concerns related to that, as related to the financial support over the past 3 years we have provided them. These discussions are ongoing, and as we collect data, we'll have further meetings, and I'll be filling the board in on how those things move forward. One other item in a related subject, as we're talking about the number of pupils in the school and the size of the schools and so forth, there has been a number of concerns brought to our attention regarding the possibility or the cautions we take regarding illegal students in the North Penn school system. Illegal meaning they do not live in the North Penn school district. The committee has asked the administration to review our policy, or maybe policy is not the correct word, the methodology that we are currently using to assure that the students that are enrolled in the North Penn School District are students that live within the district. We don't think that's a big problem within the district. We just want to review that to make sure that the community understands that is something we're looking at. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill. We'll start this side of board members that wish to ask questions of Mr. Hill. Any aspect of this report, Mr. Whites?
No question.
Mr. Schilling? Mrs. Sherwood?
No question?
No.
Mr. Allen? Mrs. Krieger?
In regards to the Tomenson Police contract, when does that current contract expire?
The contract has expired, and the contract is null and void. Well, it runs to the end of the school year.
That's right.
The renewal policy had to happen in January. We've already had an agreement that is being held in abeyance until we resolve the issues.
All right, so we have to decide this before the end of the school year then, is that?
Yes, we'll resolve it in the next month.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mosey?
I work with Don on the policy committee, so I can't.
So you guys are up to date?
No questions, we're up to date.
Okay, very good. Elementary Ed, Mr. Allen?
Yes, please. I'll do this one first. I would like you to know some of the things that are going on in the elementary grade levels. The first item is in reference to report cards. Input regarding minor changes has been received from teaching staff and principals. No major modifications will be made at this time. There will be two changes as follows. One, handwriting will no longer receive a letter grade, but will instead be a subheading under the English grade. All right. For my next act, the second item on report cards at the elementary level. Unused blocks will be shaded to prevent confusion. Okay. Next item in reference to the budget. Forms for textbooks, inventories, and furniture needs have been forwarded to and completed by all elementary principals. The information contained on these forms will be utilized during February to formulate needs for the upcoming year's budget. And that goes into the next item, enrollment projections. Enrollment projections were completed using both straight line and PEL formulas. These numbers were shared with appropriate personnel for budgetary purposes. Facilities. A facility needs study was completed utilizing straight line projections. Areas of concern exist at Gwinnett Square, Montgomery, Gwynn-Nor, and Hatfield for next year. These concerns can be addressed for next year through the combining of some class spaces and the utilization of some art and music rooms that are still remaining in the district. It should be noted that space in all the elementary schools is getting very tight. Next item, concerning kindergarten, early screening inventory. The process of testing all incoming kindergarten students utilizing the early screening inventory was discussed by a committee of teachers, counselors, reading specialists, and principals. The decision of that committee was that the test does not yield enough useful information to warrant the money and man-hours devoted to the process. The committee further recommends that a parent questionnaire similar in nature to the one currently being used continue to be utilized in an effort to gather meaningful information regarding all of our incoming kindergartners. We further recommend that an evening kindergarten orientation meeting be established at all the elementary schools. This issue has been discussed with Dr. Bose, and he is in full agreement with the decision based on the information stated above. Last item. Computer purchases have been made which delivered 20 new Macs and 12 new printers to the elementary schools in an effort to increase the hardware accessibility for all students. This is in addition to the computers that will be transferred when the new labs are installed at the middle schools. Next item. Last week, Pat Mosey and I were invited to a review of the Curriculum Review Committee, and we were given the following report. You're right, I shouldn't read it, but I'm committed now, Pat, I will. Progress report of the committee for English, Language Arts, and Reading. On November 8, 1995, a report to the North Penn School District Board of School Directors included the purpose of the committee membership, the organized structure, the curriculum review process, and the communications plan. Since that time, our committees have continued to meet. The Needs Assessment Subcommittee created 7 versions of a needs assessment survey, which were included in our February 15th packet. The Curriculum Subcommittee created curriculum charts for grades K through 12, period. In grades K through 6, the following areas were examined: handwriting, composing text, investigating language, learning to learn, transacting with text, and extending writing and reading. In grades 7 through 12, the following areas were examined: literature, composition, grammar, vocabulary, speech, and interdisciplinary and technological concerns. The Research Subcommittee continues its endeavor to review the multiple sources of information available and to organize it for a presentation to the full committee. The Steering Committee has met monthly to review the progress of these 3 subcommittees and to plan for full committee meetings. The full committee met in December to review the needs assessment surveys, and in February again to review the curriculum committee report. Page 2. Guidelines for development of needs assessment. 3 goals were established for the needs assessment. Number 1, to gather information about the English language arts reading programs from an anonymous perspective. 2, to develop a baseline for later evaluation of programs. 3, to develop recommendations about future programs. The following categories were established for inclusion in each needs assessment: instructional materials, instructional delivery systems, grouping procedures, higher level thinking skills, technological issues, student response to curriculum, assessment issues. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We'll start to the left. Board questions. Mr. Mosey?
None.
Mrs. Krieger?
None.
Mr. Hill?
No.
Mrs. Scher? Mr. Schilling? Mr. Weitz? Mr. Allen, you have us speechless. Good report, thank you.
Thank you.
Secondary education, Mr. Mosey.
I would just like to mention that in that meeting last week, aside from receiving an overview, I hope you all received the folder in your packet. If you didn't, I would suggest you get it from Mr. Weir. It shows the different questionnaires that were sent out to the different people that are being asked to respond. That was basically all I had. It's a 3-phase operation: review curriculum in the first year, second year discuss materials, and third year implementation. Also, would like to thank Dr. Vaughn, because tonight we received a copy of Program of Academic Studies, and I see that Honors is back. So I know we beat you up pretty much at the last meeting, but yeah, it's back, but it's there. And I thank you. I thank you. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Mosey. Board questions starting to the right. Mr. Weitz.
No questions.
Mr. Schilling.
No question.
Mrs. Scher? Mr.
No.
Allen? Mr. Hill?
No.
Mrs. Krieger?
No.
Okay, thank you. Fine report, Mr. Mosey, and we do join in thanking Dr. Bond for returning honors where it rightfully belongs, in the program of studies. Thank you. Okay, special education and student services, Mrs. Krieger, if you will.
I have no report this month. My fund begins next month, I understand from Judy. So March is the magic month for student services.
Just in case, are there any questions, Mrs. Krieger? Around? On her no report?
On my no report.
There you go. Okay, support services, Mr. Weitz.
No report.
Would anybody wish to question him?
I can repeat it.
You've gotten away unscathed. Okay, finance, Mrs. Scher.
Yes, on Tuesday of this week, both myself and Mr. Hill met with Mr. Kelly to discuss a general format to oblige the board's wish for a summary. Be put together for the budget. It will not be a replacement for the detailed line by line, but it will provide you with advanced synopsis by department and object so that you can view this. And later this week I will see that copies are distributed so that you can see that. Any board members that have a further need for added information or comments, suggestions, can forward those back. Also at that meeting, Mr. Hill and I both, as representatives on finance, requested that item 5C under the superintendent's report regarding the funding, the decisions rather on funding for the Penndale renovation project be actually removed until the questions pending from our January board meeting are answered and resolved regarding what the options are, what our total debt would, indebtedness would be. I believe that was in respect for Mr. Mosey, Mrs. Mangle, myself, and Mr. Clemens' request that we have a ballpark figure there. So I am making that request at this time. Again, I'd also like to bring to the attention that we'll be also voting for a tax collector in Montgomery Township. And through an intergovernmental agreement, a great deal of administrative and interest loss well, I should say it's lost from us in that the money isn't in our account. It's not that it's clear that anybody else would generally be benefiting from it either. But it is coming in through a direct deposit, and through that and other changes being made, it looks like we could expect a $50,000 savings that is otherwise just lost sitting in the bank without interest collection. So I would strongly recommend that we support that recommendation. It is to replace a vacant spot. Dennis, there has been bond security?
Yes, there has, Mrs. Sharp.
Okay, surety bonds, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, so things are in order there, and that would be to replace Mr. Sin's vacant position. I believe that pretty much covers it, other than budget transfers at the back of the agenda. See, these budget transfers, they serve the purpose of adjusting the budget where funding is available to an area of the budget within that category in need of funds, for those board members who aren't familiar with those. Dennis, we will be making one adjustment or not regarding the long-range plan?
Yes, will be an
funding.
adjustment made next month. The budget transfers as shown this evening represent the entire budget, which was to go till September 30th. So there will be an adjustment so that the carryover will go from July through September.
As you'll see, it's listed as $33,500 being adjusted, but because the actual period of time, I spoke with Dennis and wanted to be clear, does this mean then there is still going to be subsequent funding needs? And as it is, there is actually about 1/3, somewhere around there, there's a certain amount of money that will have to be pulled out because it actually falls into our next budget year, just by the timelines that there's a carryover. In other words, our budget year is till June 30th that we're active in, and so those funds will be carried over. That is the full, complete, anticipated transfers dealing with this, so you're clear on that. That'll be one adjustment. End of report.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Sher. Board questions starting to the left, Mr. Mosey.
Mr. Kelly, Mrs. Shear mentioned we're losing $50,000 in interest.
The current setup, Mr. Mosey, with tax collectors is that the money is going into right into a township, if you will, account. It's usually in the tax collector's name. They then transfer it to us on an irregular basis. We've asked them in the past to transfer it as soon as it hits $100,000. There are many occasions when I get a check for $4 to $5 million at a time. I do not have access to the tax collector's records, so it's hard for me to gauge when that money has been received by them. By instituting this new system where Montgomery Township is taking the role in collecting it, we're going to establish an account in our name that they will deposit our tax checks right in. So we will be earning interest from day of receipt rather than from when we get it from the tax collector.
Thank you.
Mrs. Krieger.
Yes, Mrs. Shear, in regards to item 5C, was that a motion to continue that item till next month?
I am recommending that will be addressed when we approach that
Madam
item.
Chairman, would that require a second? Do we vote on that at this time or when we get to that?
When we get to that point, because I believe that would be a consensus of the board. I know that it was Mrs. Scher's wish. We spoke this week on the phone, and I thought it would be best just to have it here in public, a consensus, and we move it on and recycle it into March's work session.
Fine, thank you. Over question.
Mr. Hill?
No, I just want to no, but yes. I want to elaborate a little bit on what Vicki said, is that the meeting we did have with Mr. Kelly was, I thought was very productive. And I think the board is going to be, will receive favorably the budget process and the way it's going to be presented so it's going to be understood. And we plan to have that available at the work session in March at that time. And the purpose of having it at that time is so the board can understand phonics. The board can understand the methodology that we're planning to use and get approval on the methodology. And so then he can have clear direction for the rest of the budget layout. And so that's, and at the same time, related to Mr. Mosey's concern and all our concerns is then we can move ahead with this budget and get it started in March and April, so we're not pushing it towards the end of the year.
Okay. Mr. Allen?
Yes. I want to make sure I understand this correctly. Because we haven't had a tax collector in Montgomery Township, we're gonna make an extra $50,000?
No, Bill.
Because we're gaining more interest?
No, that isn't the case. It's a matter of the new method that we'll be beginning with this hiring. As you know, our tax collections are minimal right now. Dennis and I have spoken about this. Now, we are under contract through 1997 and have certain also requirements and certain restrictions simply because this is an elected position that is an institution in the state. Now, there are different things that we could consider, such as an incentive when we set our fees for them to oblige us for the direct deposit. We can have a discussion with them and request that they do this, because under this situation, as best we know it, this money is being placed into a bank account, but not their personal account, to where there isn't necessarily any financial gain for either the tax collector or the district. It's really the institution, or it could be that they're making deposits perhaps a week after collection. And when you have this much money coming in tax collections, that percentage can add up considerably. And if we average 50,000 for our major municipalities, and perhaps 20,000 that could be evaporating there on our small boroughs, I think it's something we do need to pursue, and we would like to see what can be done with this. We'll be definitely looking into it further, and we may be able to accomplish something before the expiration of the current contract.
Did you say that we cannot, in a roundabout way, did you say that we can't collect our own taxes?
Not under the contract that's now active. It's set by the county commissioners.
That's correct. That's really a question for Mr. Potash to answer.
Well, the history of this is with the vacancy created by the outgoing tax collector. It was proposed that the intergovernmental cooperation would be created, and a proposed contract was submitted, which I had reviewed for Mr. Kelly, and pointed out the advantage of having immediate deposits so that the school district wouldn't lose the interest, and we framed a contract which would cover that. In fact, as late as 6 o'clock this evening, I finally saw the final draft, which does provide for exactly what you say, Mrs. Scher, and they have incorporated all the suggestions that Mr. Kelly and I had discussed some time ago, which is that you will get the money as quickly as possible. It's going to be an account open in the name of the school district, where the tax collector will not be holding that money and then transferring. The money will be going directly into a designated account owned by the school district, and the moment that money should come in from the taxpayer, it should go into that account and you'll accrue the interest. There's other ways you can eliminate a tax collector and collect the money yourself. However, you would have to have some sort of intergovernmental agreement also, because under the law, it really is the township that has to do that. But you can designate your people to be the tax collector too.
You're saying it's through the township, not necessarily through state
no, the law governs
political rules? Because Tillmanton itself has basically minimized taken over its own tax collection.
That's
We're
correct.
the only ones active there.
Except depends upon what class township you are and who has to collect the taxes. However, there's nothing that says that you can't have some sort of intergovernmental agreement where your own, you can designate, or it can be by agreement that we designate our own tax collector here.
Well, perhaps this should be a cooperative effort.
But this agreement is a good agreement the way it's written.
When we do that, Mr. Potash, does that have to be done prior to the new election?
That is correct. That is correct.
We could start now for...
That is correct.
Okay.
But it would have to fall after.
That is correct.
Due notice before they
That is
ran for
correct.
office.
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought we were bound while they were still in office, that we could not usurp that
In fact,
election.
you can't even change the compensation during
Right.
the term. Right.
Mr. Allen, we're with your questions.
Yes, I have another question. On the agenda, I see, I'm looking for the exact wording, but I thought it said something like, consider, here it is, consider or recommend approval for the collection of school taxes by the appointed tax collector of Montgomery Township. Are we appointing a tax collector?
No.
Are we just,
We're affirming.
We're affirming their selection.
they did?
As with other tax collectors, their compensation is paid directly to them in their name. we will be reimbursing Montgomery Township. We will not be reimbursing a person.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, thank you.
Mr. Schilling. Mr. Weitz. Mrs. Scher, this evening as we listen to Dr. Michael Irwin, I would anticipate that the colleagues on the JOC, along with me, Mr. Allen, and Mr. Mosey, we will be coming forward with a recommendation that this district does in fact approve this plan as all other districts have. And I would anticipate that you, Mrs. Scher, and Mr. Kelly would need to meet, probably again, to hammer out a financial picture to recommend to this board in light of what you've learned tonight, and Mr. Kelly, what you've already known. So I just want to make notice of that. I see that as two parts. The JOC members have to make the recommendation to you, and I see finance having to come forward with a payment plan. And the other thing is, Mr. Kelly, in light of this move tonight, the enactment of this new measure of tax collection, I'd appreciate it if you would mark on your tickler this day and provide us with actual savings. You anticipate $50,000, would it quarterly or the half year or even at the end of the year? If you provide us what the actual savings are, I think the board would appreciate knowing that up against the anticipation.
That would be fine, Ms. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Under personnel, I would like to make it known to the community and also to members of the board that we did in fact meet on February 7th in executive session for matters of personnel. And at that time, you well know, we interviewed 4 law firms in light of the possibility of the hiring of a new solicitor this evening. We interviewed 8 attorneys, 2 from each firm. So again, for the record, I would note that February 7th was an executive session held by this board. Also, in regards to personnel, I had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Bose, and we have been able to formulate with Mr. Schmidt a document that will be in your packet forthcoming, and it will be in regards of our practice of handling ratifications. So we are not prepared this month, but we have a document, a draft document for you to look at, to get back to me with your comments, and I believe it has taken in all of your considerations as to how you would wish to go from here. That's it for personnel. Under legislative, I had opportunity to meet with Mr. Gladdick and Mr. Lawless in regards to the question asked by Mr. Clemens last meeting about prevailing wage. Prevailing wage as a bill is going literally nowhere, and we can anticipate that it won't go anywhere for a while because we are in a legislative elective cycle, and all these gentlemen are up for election. And as you know, prevailing wage has the linchpin argument being held by those in trade unions. So I believe we can't look for much alleviation in the area of prevailing wage while they're up for election. And to report in both of these matters, are there any questions that I may answer? Board members, Mr. White? No. Mr. Schilling? Mrs. Scher?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Hill?
No.
Mrs. Krieger?
Just point of clarification, Ms. Mangle, instead of meeting with Mr. Schmidt on the policy of ratifications, would you get back to you on what's going to be in our packets in that regard?
No, Mrs. Krieger, I'm sorry. I should also have mentioned that we are going to continue to set up an appointment for executive session with Mr. Schmidt, but this draft is in advance of that meeting.
Okay.
So if you have other comments, please feel free to get to me about them, but we're also going to have that meeting. And we welcome Mr. Schmidt back from vacation.
Thank you.
Mr. Mosey?
Just to follow up, the draft will be prior to our meeting with Mr. Schmidt.
Correct.
Thank you.
And it should be in packet forthcoming. Thank you tomorrow. Okay, colleagues, thank you. Merck Science Partnership, Mr. Weitz.
No report?
Any questions of Mr. Weitz? Long-range planning, we have a team of Clemens, Mengel, Scher, and Weitz, and I think we would probably all agree to just turn it over to Dr. Mangano if you all approve.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mengel. As you know, we spent 3 days with 54 volunteers from the community developing the mission and the vision statement, the objectives, the strategies, and the parameters to guide the action teams in terms of their future direction. And I'm happy to say that the action teams are being formulated. We have 193 volunteers in addition to the 54 volunteers for the planning committee who have indicated the various teams that they would like to work on. We will have our first action team meeting on Tuesday, February 20th at the high school. And we have given the district leaders the direction in terms of the strategies that they will have to work through. The expectation of the action team will be to develop an action plan that will be very detailed, and it will also have attached to it a cost-benefit analysis for every item that is going to be presented that will have a significant impact on budget. The responsibilities of the action team members will be to honor the strategies that have been created by the planning committee. They will participate actively but not dominate. It will be a consensus building agreement-based program to help them get through the decision-making process so that they can come back and bring us some very good action plans that we can then bring forward to the board. The community co-chairs will be announced next week. We were waiting to see what the involvement would be from the community and who had special interest in special areas. The district co-leaders, and I'd like to announce them tonight if I might. Curriculum and instruction would be Dr. Carol Chirozzi. Staff development will be Dr. Barbara Burke-Stevenson. Assessment will be David Decker. Technology will be Lou Nyman. Diversity, Dr. Marianne Kemmer. Student life will be Jim Fennemeyer. Finances, Dennis Kelly. Facilities, Arthur Wood. Community partnerships, Gail Tatum. And special education, the district individuals involved, it will be tri-chaired by Candy Wilkins, Mitch Edmonds, and Denise Fagan, our special education supervisors. We're looking at very specific subtopics in each area. Certainly very high on our list for these action teams will be expectations, will be standards, graduation requirements, all students expecting to achieve at levels of their proficiency. Safe environment is another area of our concern. Technology integration, assessment. Just to give you an overview of what you've already received, I believe, in your packet. The other information regarding what the action team agenda will be and the roles of the team and the breakout of the teams will be forthcoming to you.
Okay.
We would encourage your participation.
Dr. Mangano asked before the start of the meeting that we put a plug in for board members who are not on the committee to please consider volunteering for a planning team. Knowing all of you as I believe I do, not only some of your education backgrounds and your work experience and your special interests, it would be much appreciated by Dr. Mangano if every board member could get on a planning team. And I asked you that with great trepidation because I know it's another night out, another afternoon out. It's more volunteerism, and I don't know if really too many volunteers is given so much time as each of you do. But if you can do so, please get with Dr. Mangano and volunteer in the planning team of your choice.
Thank you.
Okay, board call, right?
Yes.
Good. Any questions of Dr. Mangano? We'll start to the left, Mr. Mosey.
No question.
Mrs. Krieger.
The first action team meeting, Dr. Mangano, you said it was Tuesday the 20th?
Yes.
What time?
7:30 to 9:30 at the high school.
Thank you.
Back of the auditorium.
Mr. Hill.
No question.
Mr. Allen.
Are we on schedule?
We are on schedule.
Thank you. End of
Tight as it is, we are on schedule.
Are we on budget?
We are doing very well.
On the drawdown? Okay. Very good. Mrs. Sharp.
Sandy, is this going to be all action teams?
Yes.
Because finance is still formulating because of well, we would come into the picture is really after all those ideas are drawn up, and also as Dennis is busy with budget. So I'm wondering if we all still all supposed to be there?
Yes. Yes, this is the first meeting for all of the action teams and all of the volunteers so that everybody knows specifically what their job is going to be. Everybody is very clear on the process. They know exactly what they're supposed to produce in the timeline that is there. So it's a clarification night.
But it is all of those volunteers, not just the heads of the action team?
It's everybody.
Okay.
We're expecting
Okay.
over 200 people at the high school.
Thank you very much.
That's a lot of people.
Did you receive that legislation pending on
yes.
long-range strategic
Yes,
planning?
Yes, the legislation that is before in Harrisburg, Dr. Bose and I have received, and we have been in touch with Harrisburg and getting clarification on things as they are happening. And one of the things that is very key and obvious is that the outcomes that had been created with the design of the entire long-range strategic planning process from the state is going to be under high review and transferred over into expectations and their academic expectations. So it is pretty positive that that will be the direction that they're going to be looking at. So yes, we've been in constant contact with them.
That particular legislation also removed the timeline, did it not? Eliminate the 96, because in some school districts that actually may have looked like they were wiser than us in getting started, that they may have to go back to the drawing board, may they not, if that passes?
Yes, they will have to go back to the drawing board, and we have been led to believe that we should stick to the timeline that we currently have.
Okay.
And certainly there are a lot of issues for us on the docket that we have to work through, and we can do that without the particular attention to the timeline relative to the curriculum and instruction expectations and standards. So we're going to continue moving ahead on the timeline that we've got.
Okay, Mr. Schilling.
No questions.
Mr. Weitz.
No questions.
Okay, Dr. Mangano, we thank you for this report. We thank you for your efforts, and I'm sure I speak for all the board members when we say we appreciate you and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Are there any other assignments that we need to address tonight under committee reports before we go to the audience of citizens? Municipal relations was under Don's report, if you remember. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the office of the board secretary, we did receive notice from a Mr. Bill Taunton that he wishes to speak this evening. If he'd come forward and speak first. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take your comments if you'd wish to line up along the sidewall here behind the podium. That would probably expedite matters. And each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
Earlier in the week, I delivered a letter to the board members and a few other select individuals. I'm basically just going to read through it for the benefit of some of the other folks now, because I have a real concern. At the January 18th board meeting, I presented them November election results, and I attached a photocopy of the results, which many have misinterpreted as saying that the people soundly voted down the second high school. Following are other facts that I think open-minded decision makers should consider before blankly not even considering the second high school in Montgomery Township. I listed 4 items. First, the lack of any cost-benefit analysis. The 2 options that are being most seriously considered now don't even thoroughly consider the K through 12 solutions, don't offer the full solution that the second high school did. They haven't been fully considered. From my perspective, when we look at the dollar signs, the incremental cost per taxpayer would be far outweighed by the benefits that will accrue to the students and to the community. Secondly, the demographics of the student population warrant a high school in Montgomery Township. Due to the burgeoning population growth in Montgomery, they took a census in May of 1995. At that time, there were 4,844 kids less than 18 years old in Montgomery Township. Less than 3 years old were 1,043. 3 to 6, 983. It goes up to 15 to 18, 548. Obviously, the vast majority we have a lot of young children who would expect to go to public school out of Montgomery Township. How many in the other options, especially Dr. Bowe's plan, have we looked at the cost of busing all those children, not to mention the quality of education those kids are going to be missing by spending so much time on the bus? Thirdly, Montgomery Township is budgeted to pay over 28.4% of the local tax revenues coming to North Penn School District. That's 28.4%, which is a heck of a lot for one of 7 municipalities that come to North Penn. And at the current time, Montgomery only has 2 elementary schools of the 17 schools that are in the school district. Montgomery's being shortchanged by not having use of those facilities nearby. And fourthly, studies show, and we have studies, you'll be getting these, most all studies show that larger is not better when it comes to education. And it seems like we're not even discussing quality of education anymore. Okay, now I'm going to turn the tables a little bit and say the basic arguments against the second high school. First, it would raise taxes too much. Second, it would divide the community. And third, it would destroy the tradition of North Penn. Well, to the first one I say, we don't have the basis of comparison, so how can we say the taxes would go up too much? Secondly, it would divide the community. If you look at, well, have these people who say that even spoken with Central Bucks? I think that's been a resounding success. And Dr. Bowes might not even be aware of that, but Central Bucks East and West, talk to those folks. I'm sure everybody's glad they did it. Divide the community. Look at the vote totals during the most recent election.
Mr. Taunton, please wrap up.
Okay. The vote totals, the vast majority of people in Montgomery don't feel this tradition. Let's return North Penn, let's have North Penn be recognized as a leader in quality education, not quantity education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One moment, Ms. Olkowski.
Thank you.
Ms. Olkowski.
June Yolkowski, Tow-Manson Township. As most of you know, I do not have children in the BASE program. I am simply an outraged taxpayer. It has boggled my mind for the last 5 years that this school board has let the child care supplier dictate terms to us, the buyer, even drawing up the first-year contract with terms highly favorable to the writer of the contract. This sweetheart arrangement has gotten increasingly sweeter since that first year. North Penn has continued to let the supplier do as it pleases. For example, ignoring our initial requirement that North Penn supply food for this program. Vandalism has occurred, children have been mistakenly sent home, and yet we continue with this supplier. Would we let a heating oil or pencil supplier dictate terms? This is really no different. The term provider used with BASE is misleading. This firm is a for-profit supplier to North Penn School District. The proposed contract would raise our rental payments slightly more than $100 a week, but the proposed 7% fee increases for BASE to parents using the program could easily generate as much as $1,600 more a week for the supplier. BASE has already raised fees 10% since the program started. The new increase would result in about an 18% increase since the program started. Our rental fees remain absurdly low, less than 5% of what other commercial users pay to rent our schools. At the same time, a question mark rose ever larger in my mind regarding the safety of children in BASE, particularly since I learned that BASE was cited by the state for understaffing last year. By the way, parents who wish to report understaffing or other problems to the state may call an 800 number, 1-800-346-2929. I must question, why are we so enamored with this supplier? Why are problems brushed aside and fees kept so outrageously low? The new advertising fee is so low that once more it's a slap in the face of North Penn taxpayers. BASE is a cash cow whose milk could benefit our elementary students by buying computers, books, and other supplies. Instead, the school board hands over that milk to fatten a for-profit supplier where our children do without equipment they could use.
Ms. Olkowski, please wrap up.
I ask the board to delay signing this contract until we again look at these terms.
Thank you.
Can I come back later with another matter? Are we allowed any more?
We have to finish this line, Ms. Olkowski. Mr. Bacedo.
My name is John Bacedo. I'm from Bustard Road in Tow-Manson Township. I just want to talk about Sandra Mangano came forward on January the 18th, 1996, telling us that we would be able to replace outcome-based education with a rigorous academic performance standards. Yet, what happened is I took part in this thing that we had, the 3-day and what happened there was people didn't realize it, but most of the stuff that we were discussing was OBE. That book that we have, somebody happened to see it and he said, you know, in Coatesville, that's the exact same book that we have. It's OBE. And what happened was that this is what we're going to get here if the school board votes for that. You have to realize that OBE has been experimentally taught in all 50 states since 1968, and it's still going on, and we don't realize it, but it's happening in different areas. What happened was the people in Coatesville, they have 7,800 kids, and they had to pay I think it was $16,000 in addition for that OBE, and it's just starting to come out now. I want to make sure that the voters and this school board, North Penn School, realizes that the OBE is not free. There's nothing free about this thing. What is happening is that there's one guy was able to look this thing over, and he claims there's going to be a bottom line of at least $24 million. And you know the way they spend money in this school board, it's going to be a lot more than that. So nothing, we're not getting anything for nothing here, and I wish that the people would really think this over.
Thank you, Mr. Pacino. Mrs. Malfi.
Hello, Kathleen Malfi, Upper Gwinnett. I have a couple of issues. Dr. Bose, I had some questions about last Thursday night's the plan, and I couldn't stay late enough to ask them. I was curious as to the list of rooms that you have down. I was wondering exactly what are each of these types of rooms used for, typically? I mean, is there a standard for each type of room? For instance, student project rooms, is there a standard as to what would be done in those rooms?
Those rooms are titled and formulated after the requirements of the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And so a student project room would be a room where, for instance, help me, Art, small...
They're actually, student project rooms are located between science laboratories
like a science prep room.
And they're prep rooms to prepare for the science experiments that take place in those rooms.
And what is the difference between a resource room and a special education classroom? I'm told that there's a difference in the upper grades. In lower grades, we call the resource room, or that is our special education room.
Well, again, the title comes from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. It could be a room for a smaller group of students than would need in a traditionally sized classroom. But let me point out about those numbers and those expressions that paper conveyed to all those who received it. It's a demonstration of how this project might be done. It is not the done project. Mm-hmm. And so the done project is completed only after the board authorize, if the board should authorize its development, and in the employment of an architect to draw up the plans. This is not an architect's plans.
No,
this
I
architect gave of his services for what would amount to probably a day's work or a half day's work, in estimating it based upon the enrollment number we gave him. It should not be considered in any way, shape, or form a plan or a proposal.
Okay, it's just an idea.
It's one way to demonstrate how the idea might be translated into something that looks like it has some shape and form, but the shape and form is far from final.
Okay. I'd be really interested, as a parent, hearing Dr. Bond's views on the plans that are on the table and perhaps ideas of his own, especially dealing with not just the problems that he deals with today, which amazes me in a building that size, but the problems that he sees coming in the future. For instance, starting even next year when they reach capacity or surpass capacity in that building, how that might be dealt with. The other thing is, Mr. Allen, I'm very upset because when you mentioned using the art and music rooms, I really feel that these subjects are important for our students. In our school at Gwinnett Square, we're extremely lucky enough to have not only excellent teachers and I think parents to help them, but also we're lucky enough to have an art room and a sort of a music room, not exactly. I really feel that many projects can't be done by using a cart. There's no time for setup, there's no sink facilities, table facilities, so there would be a lot of things that would not be options for those teachers to use with our students. As it is, we have 27 and 28 children in second grades in our school and 28 children in the fourth grades with no aid. In second grades, we have an aide for all the classrooms, for all three, but in fourth grade, there's no aide. In my opinion, a quality education cannot be had by students in an overcrowded classroom with an overburdened teacher, no matter how dedicated he or she is, especially in the younger grades where students still need individual attention from their teacher. With inclusion today, I think it's a wonderful idea. In smaller classes, it works real well because the teacher can get to each student. But in a large classroom setting, all students lose. That's a major concern of mine and has been for the past couple of years. And my son is in one of those 27 in a classroom classes. And he has an excellent teacher, and I'm thrilled with her. No complaints at all. She gives extra time outside of school time, and I'm thrilled. The only other thing
Mrs. Malfi, your time's up.
Okay. Could I just say one thing? The proposal for independent study submitted by Alan Gold, I think is a fascinating idea, and I hope you really look into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Long.
Yes, my name is Steve Long. I'm from Montgomery Township. I'd like to ask a few questions about the proposed base contract. I see here in front of me it says that the program is renewable, and I'm questioning, is it indeed renewable or is it not automatically renewed? My understanding is...
The contract, as we've discussed over the last period of time, is a one-year contract that we'll look at the end of the year. Could be renewable, but we have to review it at the end of the year. It's not automatically renewable. Well, it could be automatically renewable if you make it so, but it's a one-year contract that we're voting on.
So as it is right now, if no action is taken by any certain time frame, it is not automatically renewed under current time frames?
To be honest with you, I don't know if it has an automatic clause in it or not, but it'll be looked at. Be assured that at the end of the contract, it'll be looked at again, and it's in for 1 year, and it'll be looked at each year.
Okay. A question as far as the 10% increase in the rents that we will be receiving and the 7% increase that the provider is able to impose. Any special reason that those numbers were chosen?
Other than the fact those were negotiated, and that was what we finally resulted in.
I guess my particular concern, I've always had concerns about this program before. I think that the program itself is great, but I've always had concerns about how some of the items have been set up. Even with a 10% increase, my math shows that we are still renting out each one of our facilities for less than $4 per hour. Less than $4 per hour, we don't have the ability to get a custodian to clean up afterwards, and we can't even get somebody to flip burgers at McDonald's for $4 an hour. So I guess I'm concerned as to why we are renting out 6,000 square foot facility, and that's basically the size that Montgomery Elementary has in their kitchen and cafeteria and gymnasium, 6,000 square feet for $4 an hour. I've looked at some of the fees that base is being charged compared to a typical daycare. At less than $19 that base would be charged, that would be including all utilities, maintenance, and so forth. A typical daycare outside of the base program generally pays about $200 in rent or in rent per day, and that's triple net, taxes, utilities, and maintenance. And reviewing the numbers, the base program is paying rent about 31 cents per day to the North Penn School District, whereas a daycare provider pays $2 a day. That may not mean much, but what I look at is a typical daycare provider is paying 652% more in rent than the base program. With that in mind, I would think that the parents that have their children enrolled in a base program would see some sort of significant, dramatic decrease in the amount of tuition that they are paying. In actuality, in reviewing the fees, I understand that the enrichment workshop for children, not only do they not pay or charge less, but in most instances they charge more to the parents of North Penn. And I guess I don't see how, by them being able to charge an additional 7%, I don't see how that's going to benefit the parents when currently the base program right now is saving such a dramatic amount.
Mr. Long, can you wrap up?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Spires.
Connie Spire, Upper Gwinnett Township. I'd like to echo what others have already said about the need for a K through 12 plan in handling the growth here in North Penn. I know we've heard a good bit about the needs and concerns at the secondary level, but I haven't heard concern or recommendations from the administration on how to handle the elementary level growth problems. I wanted to thank Bill Allen for his report. He mentioned 4 schools, I think Gwinnett Square, Montgomery, Gwinnett, and Hatfield. Looking quickly at the 90-day enrollment, I saw 3 other schools that look like will have some problems that need an extra classroom next year. We just dropped this 6th grade for this year, moved the kindergarten up. I see Bridle Path, Culp, and Oak Park as needing another classroom. And speaking with Mr. Wood on the phone, he said that we don't have any more classrooms. I don't think there's many art rooms left. So I guess my question is, I'd like to know how the administration plans to deal with the extra students other than sticking more in each room come September.
Mrs. Steyer, is that a directed question at anybody in particular?
Well, if either Dr. Bose or Dr. Sugar would like to answer.
As I've looked at it, I know I've spoken with all the principals in all 13 of the elementary schools, and we've charted it out for next year using straight line projections, doing exactly what you said, dropping off 6th grade and moving the numbers up. And we do fit by using what may now be an art or a music room, or in a few cases, we may have to move people around and even use some other area for like a learning support classroom that would not be a full-size classroom, okay? And that's what's sometimes deceiving when you think that we need a full-size classroom. In a few cases, we have a learning support class or a gifted support class that might not need a full-size classroom, currently in a full-size classroom. I'm not saying it's not tight. I'm not saying I wouldn't like to have art and music rooms. I certainly would. But you know, given everything that we have right now, we can fit next year. Okay?
Do we have many art rooms even left?
Not a whole lot, but we have enough. I guarantee you I have all the facts and figures, and I've looked at them and shared them with some of my colleagues, and we do have enough, and I shared them with the principals.
What are the long-range plans for handling the problem?
Well, beyond that, I've already, talked with Artwood and a few of the board members and said that beyond next year, we do have some difficulties, and we need to get a plan in action, and Mrs. Clark and I will be making a presentation on facilities in the very near future.
I understand, according to Mr. Wood, it's too late for modulars for next year, and that we really need to start looking at what modulars we will need in order to have them in place for the following September.
That's correct.
Okay. I would also like to request that the board considers increasing ability grouping ideas at the elementary level if you're thinking of putting more children in the classrooms at the elementary level. I don't recommend that we increase the class size, but I really don't see how else we're going to handle the problem. Okay, I have one other concern, which is related to something different, and that is that I was just wondering if there's any truth to the rumor that 8th grade Pembroke students who are in gifted program are being encouraged to sign up for courses which are not listed in the program of studies and are not gifted level courses.
Connie, I heard that rumor today, and I will tell you there is no change in the gifted program for next year. We have not discussed any change. I've spoken with Dr. Vaughn, I've spoken with the secondary principals. So where that got started, I really couldn't tell you, but there is no change.
Okay, I heard from a number of different families.
Everything that's available this year is available for the students next year.
All right, I would hope that you would continue to look into that, since I did hear from several people.
I have looked into that as recently as this afternoon, and I've asked the principals to do the same thing and to make sure that it's clear to parents and students, and if in fact it wasn't clear, that they bring the students back and re-explain that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Vaughn.
Thank you, Mrs. Spire. Okay, Ms. Spire, right?
Good evening. I'm a little too old to have a student in a younger classroom, but I have one in North Penn High School in 1979. He's graduated now, and he's doing quite well, and I'm very pleased with the school system. I've had 2 other children go through the school system. As far as this, I don't want to get in the hassle about everybody coming up about the school, building new schools and so forth. I mean, if you want to pass another 1.5% earned income tax or income and investment tax or something like that, then I think, as Mrs. Scherr said, after you get the finances straight, then that's appropriate. My point tonight was an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer. I haven't spoken my piece. I've been writing my piece for years. This was in the Inquirer on February 11th, and it showed, I'm talking about quality of education. It showed that this was the only one of 23 high schools in Montgomery County which didn't have enough students take that Pennsylvania system of school assessment test last year. Now, I suppose Dr. Bourne and other administrators and the parents of all these children and everybody else are the ones to ask about that, but it's really embarrassing when you have 23 high schools in the county and you're the only one that don't have enough students show up to take the test. And then for the 8th grade students, we have the same thing, that their scores are not even halfway up the ladder. So this was in the newspaper. As I say, if you'd like the copy of the newspaper, I'd be pleased to give it to you. I don't want to.
Okay,
Yeah, sure.
we'll have that copied and put out to all the board members in the event that they may have missed that article. Esquire, thank you so much. Dr. Bond, if you'd take a look at that at some time at your convenience and get back to us on your comments, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Esquire, thank you. Madam?
Good evening. My name is Pauline Rosamartier Shepherd. I live in Lansdale. I have 2 sons at the elementary level. I would like to express my concern with the B1 boundary plan. I understand that everyone cannot have their first choice. If I had my choice, I of course would want my sons to go to Penndale with all the new renovations. But regardless of what plan was chosen, my sons will go to Pembroke. Now my concern is when I looked at the figures for the enrollment, and my first son will enter Pembroke in the year 2000, and at that time projected enrollment will be 200 students and full capacity is 950. I have a real problem with overcrowded classrooms. When I observed my son in kindergarten class during Education Week, the teacher, I thought she was a wonderful teacher, very dedicated, but there was a student who needed help, and because there were so many students, the teacher was not able to see this one child who, by the time she noticed his hand raised, he was in tears. Now, when I go to observe my son in Pembroke during Education Week, I hate to think what that overlooked middle school age child might do in a classroom. I think his behavior would not be to cry, but perhaps be a lot more destructive. He might even become a discipline problem. And my question for the board is why, and I assume there is a majority consensus to go with B1 that has been stated, why is there majority rule to fill any middle school to full capacity when our overall objective, I thought, was to ease the overcrowdedness in the schools, K through 12. And as far as I can see, and the figures pretty much speak for themselves, Plan A seemed to more evenly distribute the children. Why is the board backing B1 if that's the case? And I heard concern that neighborhoods would be broken up, and that's why why B1 is being backed. But I can't see how breaking up neighborhoods would lessen the quality of education like overcrowdedness would be. And I've heard plenty of community members say why they back Plan A, why they back B1. What I haven't heard specifically is why board members are backing B1. And it would really help me, and I'm sure it would help many community members as well, if before any vote is final, if the board members who so strongly feel B1 is the best plan, if you could just let us know why that is such a much better plan over A. Is that possible?
Yes, at the time of the vote, prior to casting votes, there's usually board discussion. And at that time, that's usually when we hear why board members vote as they do. I've come to learn in 4 or 5 years here that, you know, if there's a recommendation on this agenda, it doesn't necessarily mean that all the board members back that recommendation, or that there isn't a flip-flop. So I believe every board member here heard your request, want to know why. And if that isn't forthcoming during the discussion, surely these board members are available after the meeting to get that from them personally. Mrs. Martier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Abraham.
Linda Abram from Upper Gwinnett. I was here at the committee meeting of February the 6th when the middle school boundaries were presented, and it was my understanding that there was a recommendation from the committee to approve the map that they had presented. And I remember President Clemens asking for consensus then after lengthy discussion on the B1 plan. I guess I'm a little confused. What happens to the recommendation from the committee? Is that not acted upon in some way publicly so that we know, in fact, it's been defeated? Can you clarify that for me, please?
I can try, Mrs. Abram. I would anticipate that since the consensus was reached and that specific plan placed on the agenda for action, that by default of not selecting, I guess it's Plan A, that in itself is an answer, or it is an action in itself by default, that it wasn't selected by consensus to be put on, to be voted on. And again, as I told Mrs. Rosa Martier, I've seen boards change their votes, change motions. I've seen motions fall on their face. So I can anticipate that the fact that the consensus was gathered publicly for that specific plan, that there were at least 5 votes back then. There had to be to get it on there. But there was no move at that time that I heard from any member of this board to also consider A for a separate vote.
Well, I guess I'll reiterate what Mrs. Shepherd said, and that is that the issue here is balance. And I still stand here and express to you, and I called some board members this week and expressed my concern that the B1 plan may look good at the beginning, but my fear is that we will be revisiting this very scene in the very near future, and I don't think we're going to be waiting for the year 2000 to revisit this scene, because my sense is that with housing starts really not included in those numbers on those pages, that we are going to see big problems at Pembroke, and I am very concerned about that, and I wanted to reiterate that this evening. I had another question with a completely different subject, and that was regards to the solicitor's position in the district. Can you explain to me, are law firms encouraged to participate in that process? Do you folks choose a number of law firms to look at when we come to look at this position in the district?
Mrs. Abram, what we did was an RFP process that was designed, drafted RFP, request for proposal, document that was drafted, I guess, out of Mr. Kelly's office based on such documents that have come forth out of the state and also by other business managers. At that time, they were sent out to firms of choice or request by any board member here. And I believe we had a total list of 9 various firms or individuals. Looking at individuals, they probably represented close to 20 attorneys. And that request for proposal was sent out to those firms. All firms that were sent a RFP were invited to send in their information. We also had folks that had learned of our situation here in North Penn, law firms and individual lawyers who saw that we were going to be seeking RFPs, and they sent information in on their own. That list was put together and it was brought before this board in an executive session. This board then took that list and whittled it down to, by consensus, 4 firms that would be brought in and interviewed. And they were given full interviews. Each firm had the exact same amount of time, 45 minutes, to answer 3 set questions and then question from each board member of their own choosing. And each firm came with 2 attorneys. So we saw 4 firms and 2 attorneys, a total of 8 attorneys that evening of February 7th.
Do I assume that these firms have school board experience, as Mr. Potash's firm has had for so many years with so many districts? Was that a prerequisite and consideration?
There was a prerequisite for a combination of municipal, governmental, and/or school law.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Mr. Bailey.
Excuse me, I have 2 quick things I'd like to do. One, the proposed addition of the addition to the high school is somewhat controversial. I have recommended that the school board consider engaging the services of a facilities utilization consultant to review the existing facilities and determine to what extent there's an opportunity to make greater utilization of the existing building before we decide on whether or how big an addition we need. I've been asked to come up with a list of possible people. I've done that. I would like to give it to somebody for distribution. I've not personally checked these people out myself. They are suggestions. I'm not looking at the list. There is a consultant there. Some of the major accounting firms have consulting divisions. I think Pete Marwick is one, Touche Deloitte is another in Philadelphia, Arthur Anderson's another. There may be others. A lot of these big accounting firms provide management consulting and other types of consulting services. It has also been suggested that University of Pennsylvania, Villanova, University of Delaware, other universities may have expertise that would help out. Next subject is the proposed cost of the proposed addition. I think was $15 million. I think that probably works out to, I'm going to say $300 to $400 per year per household. I would suggest that before you do that, remember that that cost is only a small part of the total cost to the taxpayers that live in the district. There are direct costs that people pay, and there are indirect costs. Each person will pay a direct cost in taxes to the district. The indirect costs happen because as real estate taxes go up, the cost of running every business in the area goes up. Those business people will have to pass on their cost in terms of price increases. Their employees will be faced with higher taxes, higher prices of products they buy. They will demand increases in wages and salaries, and that will give another kick to the prices that people pay. You laugh, some of you, but this is reality.
Mr. Bailey, can I stop you for just a moment and explain to you, we are not laughing at you. I would not permit the board to do that. But when Mr. Bond at some point gives us his recommendations for the expansion, we're going to give pitchers of water to everybody in the audience. And they're all going to pour their water at the same time on Mr. Bond. So next to the microphone while someone else is talking. So, Mr. Bailey, for taking that insult, I'm going to give you another 3 minutes. Please, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Two more points I'd like to make, and then I'll be quiet.
Thank you.
I think it is quite possible that a $350 per year increase in the real estate tax could translate ultimately into an extra $1,000 per year cost of living for everybody that lives here. Just one little example of how much leverage there is there. If I have to pay an extra $60 in real estate taxes out of my after-tax income, my employer has to increase my salary by $100 so that I have that much left over after paying 28% federal income tax, 2% Pennsylvania tax, and 7% Social Security tax. Now, that employer's cost of doing that is not $100. It's closer to $125 to $135, depending on who your employer is. They pay employment taxes. They pay taxes on the privilege to hire you. They pay benefits. They pay some Social Security tax on your behalf, and all of those things increase their cost. So in order for me to get, say, an extra $60 a year of spendable income, my employer has to pay 2 to 3 times that much, probably something in the order of 2.5 times that much. And he has to pass that on in terms of price increases for every product he sells and every service he provides. And we, you, all of us have to pay that. It's a hidden cost, but it's very real. Thank you very much.
Mr. Bailey, thank you so much. Student cameraman, we need to take a break, and we will do so 5 minutes. Please return. Before we start, where are the batteries in the box? Mr. Gold's on deck. Student cameraman, are we ready? Thank you. we have all board members back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome back. Student cameraman, we are ready, correct? Okay, thought I'd give you a plug there. And Mr. Gold, it's all yours.
Thank you. Alan Gold, Lansdale. First of all, I'd like to thank the audience for its non-confrontational remarks tonight in comparison with a week and a half ago. Pretty vicious. Secondly, I just wanted to make a comment in preparation. I realized that what I wanted to do, a proposal for independent study for the summer of '96. I wanted to have it voted on today, but it has to go through committee and several other steps, so I hope it'll be put on for next month and be voted to go ahead with this proposal, because I think it's a way to really make a statement for this community, and I think it'll be adopted by a lot of other communities as well if it works well here in the summer. But I guess the main thing is just to, first of all, I thank everyone for their support for this proposal. People even that I didn't even know on the street who had seen me on TV in the previous, because of this 3-minute section last week, come up and said it's a great idea. I think it's going to fly if we promote it. So that's about all. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gould, thank you. And I'd like to reiterate what I told you at the break, and that is that matters such as this go to the proper committee. And with this 9 to 12 independent study, which I agree with Mrs. Malfi is most intriguing, this will be given to Mr. Mosey from Secondary Ed and to Dr. Bond, and any recommendation that they would have for a work session would be forthcoming from that committee. And then from a work session, there needs to be consensus before something is placed on an action agenda. So that's the normal process that we generally follow, and I think is backed by policy. So again, we always thank you for your interest in this district. Oh, one other thing, Mr. Gold, if we can copy these and make sure that they get around, realizing that your home phone is on here, that's okay, with your permission. Thank you. Mrs. Curry.
Dorothy Curry, Lansdale. I was surprised when I read last night's paper to see that the board would be voting on the solicitorship tonight due to the fact that this is, quote, is the board that's all for openness, and there's been no public discussion whatsoever on that criteria, on the qualifications you were seeking. And I don't want to discuss the Sunshine Law. I am certainly, aware of that. However, the qualifications of the person you're seeking should certainly be, within the realm of public discussion. However, I came up here tonight really to pay tribute to someone who has served this district for many, many years, and that is our solicitor, Charles Potash. I'm certain many board members who served in the North Penn School District over the past many years that you and your firm, and before you, of course, Raymond, represented this district, always appreciated your professional service, your knowledge on school law, every facet of school law. Some people will talk about the fee that a lawyer is paid, but we must also remember the many dollars that are saved because we do have competent professional advice in the field of law. Not someone who's a generalist, but someone who truly was a specialist in the field of school law, in special ed, and contract law, and labor law, and in everything else we had to deal with as a school district. So I thank you, Charles. I know that, as I said, many other board members and many school administrators who have served in this district would echo those thanks for your many fine years of service. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Mrs. Curry. Madam?
My name is Bobby Penniman. I'm from Tillmanson Township. I've been coming to the school board meetings for about a year. This is the first time that I have taken the podium. I have a daughter who will be entering Englewood next year. By virtue of when she was born, she has never been counted in a census. As far as the school board is concerned, the community in which I live, she doesn't even exist. I wonder how many more kids there are of her age that you have no knowledge of whatsoever because she's never been counted or he has never been counted. I implore you to please do not sell the Keenest Road property until such time as you have established a comprehensive K through 12 plan. I am terrified at the prospect of my daughter going to school under the conditions that I'm assuming she's going to find next year and in the subsequent years. I hope that the advice that is being given, being discussed in executive sessions or while you're talking amongst yourselves is not coming from the same party or parties who have recently said, I'm going to budget $400,000 for the purchase of the 4-H property, but I really hope to get it for $250,000. I have been a professional for 20 years, and I have negotiated contracts and handled large sums of money for 20 years. When I have entered into a negotiation, I don't think I have ever said what my high is when I first shake hands with the party with whom I am negotiating. Never. I can't imagine that party would then agree, after I said my high was $400,000, to sell that item to me for $250,000. Please do not sell that Keenest Road property at this time. It might be appropriate to sell it after a K through 12 plan has been developed and approved and has received an overwhelming consensus from the community, but not now. Thank you.
Mr. Robinson.
Gary Robinson, Hatfield Township. On Friday, January 19th, I met for 2 hours with 4 people from the Auditor General's Department. I understand that at least one of them was in here to the school district last week on the 6th. The understanding I had from them on the January 19th meeting was that after they did their regular review, they would also be looking into the purchase of the whole tract and also looking for what does or doesn't exist as to subsidiary ledgers of the bond accounts and projects, which we've asked for and have not received. Also, a very disturbing thing, January 25th, my attorney informed us that he had received a threatening letter from Attorney Roos. Based on that letter, last week I filed complaints with the Attorney General of the state and with the Lawyer Disciplinary Board of the State Supreme Court. And also this past Monday, Mr. DeFelice and myself did also refile, asking for the court to reconsider and reopen our petition for access to the financial records that we have not received. One final thing I note, in the 94 financial report the school district got, on page 19, they reflect U.S. government and agency issues of $45 million, and this most recent one, June 30, 95, $12.4 million, $33 million less. If last year as a school district and the board says that they took out a $25 million note, swapped it for $25 million bond money, in essence it should be about a wash. If the $25 million note was used for a short-term higher interest rate, we should still have, according to that, $45 million. If it's not in the long-term investment, is it in the short term? Where did the $33 million go?
Mr. Robinson, we take note of that question, and I will have Mr. Kelly get back to you with an answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly,
Can I give a
please.
quick one?
No.
A very quick answer would be the project across the street of Pendale is where a lot of that money went. While we have money invested, we're also paying bills.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, I wish you...
But I will look into it further.
Please, would you look into it and consider the question and get back to your finance liaison, and she can get back to the rest of the board with the answer, and then we'll get on to Mr. Robinson.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mrs. Bengal. Greg Anderson, Montgomery Township.
I have a couple different topics with some questions. I'd like to just sort of press through them and go back so as not to use up the 3 minutes. I'd like to think outside the box for a moment about the VOTEC and maybe save some money. Have we considered, and I'd ask Mr. Potash, is it even possible to contract with schools in surrounding areas? I read this week that Central Bucks' VOTEC is operating at less than 50% capacity and begging their students to enroll. Might it be possible during the construction phase to move some students there, and with that kind of arrangement ease our burden? Also, I'd like to point out, I don't wish to embarrass the gentleman who was here earlier, the financing gentleman, but I would like to remind the board that his firm was the responsible underwriter for one of the issues that has been called into question, and so we might want to consider whether we'd want to wrap our own financing for that project rather than use that underwriter for any VOTEC-related project. Secondly, in regards to Keenest Road, I think you indicated in January that there is a general preference of this board to borrow rather than sell. And assuming that you don't vote to table that tonight, I'd just like to continue to encourage that option. I think now is the time to be borrowing because interest rates are historically low. I think a fire sale of the property would not bring the best price, and that would be against the taxpayers' interests. And also, I think you are all in receipt of my study showing that it may cost less to hold the land and finance it rather than allowing it to be developed, because by my calculation, there would be a $300,000 to $400,000 deficit in the taxes collected versus the cost of providing services to the students who would occupy the developments. And perhaps it's possible for us to find an open space grant or something like that to cover some of those costs. I'll have a question for Mr. Sugar or Mr. Allen about their report. I'd like to know why straight line numbers are being used to project elementary growth when, courtesy of Dr. Bond, we now have proper growth and building permit data for the whole district. And I would like to apologize at this point for a misstatement from this podium last month when I suggested that the district had not gone through that process. I have learned that it has, and I appreciate the fact that it did. And I'd like a confirmation that there will be no border changes in the elementary schools for next year in order to accommodate that. Finally, I have this bad habit of not throwing anything away, and I pulled out a copy of last March's work session on high school options. It seems to me that, first of all, they did address elementary concerns at that time, and also that in less than 1 year, a wide variety of facilities that had been considered educationally essential have fallen off Dr. Bose's plan. I went down the list and I saw a greenhouse missing, which is not a big deal, but I saw 8 science classrooms turned into general classrooms. I saw an entire band and chorus complex struck. I saw an entire gymnasium complex struck. I saw instructional offices, half of the administration expansion, several student activity rooms struck, and I'm wondering why those things are suddenly not necessary when, if option A had been chosen a year ago, they would have been included in that plan. I'd like to know if those discrepancies will be explained.
Mr. Anderson, we need to wrap up.
Okay. And also, I'd like to know whether the responsible professionals, such as the band and chorus directors and the librarian, will be asked to give their opinion as to whether their current facilities can accommodate a 37% growth in the number of students using those services.
Okay, Mr. Anderson, thank you. You've given us quite a number of questions. Many of these questions are ones board members have already asked the administration. I see 2 things happening in the near future, and that is a continuation of facilities planning and addressing of those issues, and also the budget. So I think somewhere between additional finance planning meetings and budget meetings, these questions that you have and many members of this board have will be hammered out, and we will need the administration to help us do that.
Okay. Could I ask for an answer to the question about why straight line was chosen for the elementary projection for this year?
I can answer it by saying that the projections were completed using both straight line and PEL formulas. These numbers were shared with appropriate personnel for budgetary purposes.
But it did not use Dr. Bond's most recent building permit?
I honestly can't tell you which PEL numbers were used. Dr. Sugar, can you help?
I'm in the process of, I'm trying to work it out in a number of different ways. This is a preliminary report. I said we'll have the total package by next month.
Okay, my concern is that straight line doesn't work in every school because some schools are in higher growth areas.
Right, we understand that, okay, but I also understand that there are, certain questions about the effectiveness of the PEL, so what I did want to do is present it in a number of different fashions, okay? And straight line is certainly one of the ways to do that. Okay, but that's why I was trying to make it clear that this was just one way to do it, and we'd be presenting the whole package next month.
And is it true that right now you don't anticipate any changes in the borders?
Mr. Anderson, that's your second question.
Well, it was part of that question. Are there any border changes anticipated, or right now you don't anticipate moving students?
There's no anticipation for that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any others in the audience?
Right. Are there any other audience members that wish to speak for the first time? Mr. Hammond.
Good evening, I'm Chuck Hammond from Montgomery Township. First, I want to clear up one thing. That was not Dr. Vaughn, that was Charles Potash that did the water truck.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now that I let you off the hook,
Thank you.
now that I let you off the hook, I guess my major concern, and I've been, wanting to ask these questions concerning team teaching, that we have no means of evaluating team teaching from what I've heard at many of these sessions. That we have no way of evaluating current grade point averages against perhaps 3 years ago when the district did not have that type of thing, or we cannot go to other school districts and in fact evaluate other school districts that don't have team teaching. I happen to be a student of the information superhighway right now, and surprisingly there's very little information out there about team teaching. I ran across one, I guess, in Japan or something like this, in some place in Colorado or something. And for something that is so widely acclaimed, I find very little information, about that type of thing. And again, I guess I am just hoping for the sake of our students that if we have no way of evaluating this, that in a few years we discover this was a bad experiment and shame on us. I would hope in the very, very near future that we do develop some way to evaluate this, and we should have it now. After 3 years, there's got to be some way to evaluate where we are today and where we were 3 or 4 years ago on this. The second point I'd like to make also is I happen to be a product of a school district, or a high school, if you will, of about 6,000 students. Today there are over 5,000 students in that same building. The building is obviously a heck of a lot older than 25 years. The facilities are still working in it, and the quality of education is really not related to class size. That school building and that school today still is about the top 3rd school in the city of New York. It's not quality of education and class size that are related. It's the quality of the teachers, their determination, and the parents' involvement in what the teachers and the students are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Okay, madam.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Orr, and I'm from Lansdale. My husband and I have 2 children in this school district. And my question this evening is directed to Dr. Bose. It's considering the expansion of the high school. Could you possibly consider 3-site expansion as the 2 that you've proposed? Specifically, I was considering combining the science requested rooms as an expansion on the science pod, as well as the expansion that you proposed on the cafeteria, and then the site that you chose to consider a social studies pod.
As I understand your question, it goes to where the addition would be located.
Okay. Can you consider 3 as opposed to 2?
I wouldn't think that what was proposed in any way, shape, or form represents a final product.
But is it possible to consider 3
possible to consider other
to
locations.
organize the subjects like they are at present, where they have an English pod, there's a science pod, there's a language, and the D&E is divided between math and social studies, but to create the new one, a social studies pod.
I wouldn't rule that out.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else for the first time? Yes, sir.
My name is Mercer Sisson. I'm from Talmunson Township. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to this board for achieving a grant that delivered 20 new Macintosh 5200 computers to the elementary schools. However, I would like to point out that this is far too few, far too late. The elementary schools have been saddled with equipment that is in excess of an average of 12 years old, 7 to 12 years old, all kinds of stuff. There is junk in those schools. These teachers cannot use this material. The old Apples and old 2GSs, I know I volunteer in those schools 3 or 4 times a month, helping them to use their equipment. I would really suggest that the district develop a strategy of replacement of equipment, particularly computers, in the elementary level, with new equipment and not cast off necessarily down from the middle and upper grade levels. Because what happens is by the time it gets there, it's already obsolete. But I do congratulate you with buying those computers, and I really encourage you to continue to do that directly to the elementary level. And secondarily, I'd like to really encourage you to keep in mind that you must train the teachers on how to use this equipment. It must be a comprehensive and complete package to train them, because they will not be able to utilize it for the students in any effective way without good, solid training. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sisson.
Just a general comment. That's what the strategic planning process that we're starting is all about. There is a special action team for technology, and I understand there are forms at the back of the room still looking for volunteers for varieties of committees. But that is specifically the kinds of issues that committee will be dealing with.
Mr. Sisson, too, in all due fairness to the work that Mr. Weitz has done in technology on behalf of this board as part of his volunteer service, during our budget sessions, technology usually comes up as a specific expenditure item. And Mr. Weitz's leadership has provided us in with some phasing in programs. He did a very fine job presenting that to us last year, and I believe we accepted most of that, didn't we, Mr. Weitz? So I would encourage you to come out to the budget hearings and see that again and see where we go in that area of technology. Okay, anybody else for the first time? Okay, I am aware that 3 of you wish to speak again, and I'm going to ask that it be for 1 minute this time. Mrs. Olkowski, you did ask first. Mr. Bailey, you asked me second. And Mr. Totten, I'm just assuming since you're standing, you wish to speak again. So in that order, and that would cut it off, and then we get to board actions.
Okay, well, I apologize if my voice is weak, but I have a bad cold, and this is the best I can do. I think all of you, when you first got on the board, were amazed at the amount of work and the amount of time involved. I know you're all unpaid, and I appreciate that time. I'm here really to ask you to give more time when it's necessary. There's been some criticism of board members and of the public for taking time at board meetings and in discussions with administrators, taking up time and making meetings longer by asking questions. I think an informed board is a board that makes the right decisions. And I think the more questions we need to ask, the better, because I want you to be as fully as informed as possible when you make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Olkowski. Mr. Bailey, 1 minute, please.
There's one additional point I failed to make. The impact of higher taxes and higher wages. Has anyone noticed that Leeds and Northrop, who was bought by General Signal, has left the area? The reason they did that is because high taxes and high cost of wages in this area, high cost of doing business in this area helped to cause them to leave. American Olean Tile appears to be in the process of doing the same thing for the same reason. They were bought out by, I believe, Dallas Tile, and apparently Dallas Tile is in the process of thinking about at least moving their American Olean Tile operations from this high-cost area to a low-cost area in Texas. So when you increase taxes and you force wages up, you may be taking action which force employers to leave, and if that happens, we'll all be stuck with the bill and we won't be able to afford it.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Mr. Totten, your closing.
Okay, I'm going to ask a quick question of Dr. Vaughn and ask for his question, ask for his answer after asking other questions of somebody else. Dr. Vaughn, Mrs. Malfi didn't wait for an answer, and I'm not going to ask, I ask you to answer my other question since it's running into my minute. How do you assess Dr. Bose's plan, which seems to be the Field of Dreams plan, which is build a building and they will come, but not necessarily add more people to manage it? I'd like your response. Mrs. Mingle, on what you said about the solicitor, what I read in the paper is that you're going to split up the duties. Does that mean we're going to have three people sitting here for specific things? That to me doesn't save money. Also, I talked to the Downingtown paper to get the approval for the cartoons in your packet. His comment was these sunshine laws, they approved I could give out these comics. He said these boards, they can get in trouble with these sunshine laws, all personnel issues, all buying land issues. I said, what? Buying land? Does that include selling land? I sure hope that if tonight, which is, I don't see it on the agenda, you're going to vote for these people to represent us, that we look very carefully, because I know there were some people who made some mighty nice political contributions to certain members who are sitting here on this board. I have a real problem with where this seems to be going.
Thank you, Mr. Totten. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the audience of citizens, and I thank each and every one of you for not only listening attentively, but those of you that participated, we always appreciate your questions and comments. At this time, I turn the meeting then over to Dr. Bose.
The first item for the board to consider considered, comes without a recommendation because it represents an initiative undertaken by the board itself, and that is the board is now going to consider boundary adjustments for the 3 middle schools.
We have a motion by Mrs. Scher. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Let me back up. We do need, thank you, Mrs. Krieger, we do need comments.
Discussion.
We need discussion. Start to the left, please. Mr. Mosey.
I said everything I was going to say during the action meeting, or the workshops, I'm sorry. I felt that in discussing with Dr. Vaughn, we did go over figures. And I felt that the plan, as I said, I felt that we should utilize our buildings to the maximum as well as our transportation facilities to the maximum. I do not like breaking up school districts or schools at any level. And the other plan would have done that, I believe, in Talamenson. And I expressed my concerns, as I said at the workshop, so I don't have anything further to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mosey. Mrs. Krieger.
I just have a couple of comments in regards to a special delivery board packet that we received from Dr. Bose on February 12th in regards to a memo that Mrs. Scheer sent with questions for clarification on our facilities needs K through 6 for 2000 for construction budgets and balance of funds. In special regard to Penfield and Pembroke. And I was quite taken aback by the response. And I wish to make a statement this evening in regards to that response, because I'm finding it quite difficult to cast a vote for any of these boundaries tonight. I find it absolutely ridiculous that this board is being asked to carry on a plan that was approved by a previous board that is in direct relationship to the second high school. This board is no longer doing a second high school. I'm finding it very difficult to approve boundaries when we do not have specific answers to questions in regards to the disparity between Pembroke, Penfield, and the renovated Pendale, and our ability to meet curriculum needs starting in September of this year, especially for the 9th grade. I am having a very hard time with being asked as a board member to give the administration firm decisions first in regards to boundaries, commitments to the 3 middle schools, grades 7, 8, and 9, course selection by middle school students, decisions regarding staffing of the 3 schools, and last but not least, a study and further reporting from the transportation department. I find it totally ironic that we're being asked to make a decision first, giving this administration the opportunity to come to us later with the answers to these questions and how much it's going to cost us. If this board is truly fiscal conservatives, wanting to do the responsible thing by the students in this community, they will take the suggestions of John Fisher and put on hold for 1 year's time, or until August, whichever you prefer, till our strategic planning process is completed, and venture into a comprehensive plan, K through 12, and do the responsible thing, and define for this community where we are going, the education we are going to provide, and most importantly, how we're going to pay for it. To do anything less is totally remiss of the duties that we undertook when we took our oath in December. And I will not be voting for any of the boundaries plans tonight in that regard because of it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hill.
I'm waiting for the applause. We discussed this thoroughly at the work session, and I've looked at it, and I think we have to move forward with the boundaries. What Ms. Krieger brought in was a more general package about the schooling and the K through 12, and that all is going to be before us. But that does not change us from having to make these boundaries, because they got to lay it out for the next school year, and I'm going to be supporting the agenda item.
Okay, Mr. Allen.
I understand what Mrs. Krieger's saying, but I don't think we can hold up this process. However, I have had my say about what is known as Plan A. I think that is best for the long-term benefit of North Penn community, and that's the only plan that I would vote for. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Short.
I see us heading perhaps into a catch-22 situation here. I would say that I support Plan B on the basis that I believe it was more logical, it created less disruption, it divided less communities, went through less neighborhoods, and it escalated in a rather even fashion. And while many may point to 900 students in the year 2000, I think that is much more preferable, and certainly it's further out in the distance than us having to deal with the pending renovations of Penfield and Penbrook, dealing with the enrollment as proposed in Plan A. Many things do happen, and certainly none of us have crystal balls to be able to have the total answers, but I have the greatest level of confidence in that plan carrying us through for the greatest amount of time. I'd like to say, as Mrs. Krieger responded to a memo that I sent, and certainly the lack of answers in the response, I certainly would feel much more comfortable to be able to sit here and be able to say that I know exactly the answers to those questions, that we need modulars, we can anticipate modulars here and there, and other alternatives that would be presented. Unfortunately, for the past 2 years since the vote took place, this district, this board, and this community has faced a great deal of disruption. We had a superintendent exit, and we had many things that laid on the table rather than being planned for. We're sitting here with a skeleton staff on our administration, which can only come focus on so much at one time. Despite my concern over being unable to achieve all that information, I have to agree that we do have to move forward, because we have to have our personnel scheduled by and notified within the next month and a half. We can't bring forward a budget if we're not quite sure what we're planning for. The estimations on the modulars, I would perhaps, Dr. Sugar, I would appreciate your update on what you foresee as modular needs. I will help resolve some of the questions as far as letting it be known that if you do suspect that a redistricting for an elementary level is the best alternative, will be the best way of resolving a recurring problem such as I've noticed in Bridle Path, I would prefer that come forward before this new boundary plan is implemented, if that should be a viable solution. I would rather us not be on annual redistricting. So any fine-tuning that you see there, I would like it to come forward. And I will be meeting with Dr. Bose, Dr. Vaughn, and Wood on Monday for the resolution of my questions. And I just appeal to the board to recognize that no, this isn't a pleasant way to vote, but this is a situation we're dealing with, that we can't have all the answers at this moment. But I will hold the administration to providing them in the very near future.
Okay, Mr. Schilling.
Yes, I can understand Mrs. Krieger's concern, but I also feel the way Mr. Hill does, that we have to move forward and give some direction here. I've talked to many people regarding this. There are a lot of good people supporting different plans. Tough call for me. Some people have said if we choose B1, we're going to have to visit this sometime again down the road. I asked other people if they feel if we do A, if we're going to have to visit it. They said, well, there's no assurance that we won't either. So it was difficult on both sides. But one thing that concerned me was splitting up of neighborhoods. And, I just can't, I had one parent say, I can't imagine my child seeing a child across the street going to another school. And that's why I basically lean to the B1 plan. I feel it, it doesn't split up the neighborhood as in Inglewood, and that's why I'm going to support it.
Mr. White.
I continue to support the unanimous recommendation of the Boundary Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weiss. Ladies and gentlemen, I too share concerns that Mrs. Krieger provided us to tonight in her statement. Many statements she made are held by most board members, and I believe that information and requirement should be forthcoming from the administration. I don't see the decision on middle school boundaries tonight as backing into anything but merely agreeing to a framework in which administrators are expected to flesh out, not only in terms of meeting student needs, in curriculum, in equipment, in accommodating Pembroke and Penfield as we look at the disparity between Penndale and those other two buildings, but a recommendation of a payment plan, Mr. Kelly. So Mrs. Krieger is right in the things that she asked, but in approving boundaries in some shape tonight, we are giving you a framework that you all need to flesh out and to do so shortly. I will be supporting B1, as you will see in my vote, and to answer Mrs. Rosa Martier, who wanted a specific answer from each board member, I'm willing to say that considerations that I made for B1 is that I don't have a student in Penndale, but if I did, I'd appreciate the drawdown schedule that I see provided in B1 for Penndale. There doesn't seem to be the blitz enrollment that was there under A, and as a parent whose child under any condition would go to Pembroke, I don't fear as much the increase, I believe, by the fifth year of 120 to 30 students as I do wanting my child's science labs to look like Penndale's. So I, as a parent, choose, and a board member, to focus more on the curriculum than the actual size of my child's school population. And once again, I see alleviation in Penndale that I know I won't be a direct beneficiary of, but there are many parents that will be. So that's my answer.
Before you call for the question.
Yes.
May I please just direct one point of clarification for Dr. Bose in regards to his memo from Mrs. Scheer. Dr. Bose, when would you be able to bring forward to the board a full discussion on your plans for enhancing the disparity at Pembroke and Penfield?
Do you mean an additional building project, Mrs. Krieger?
No, whatever it's going to take to bring those two facilities, Dr. Bose, up to par with Penndale in regards to our abilities to meet the curriculum needs.
In the science labs?
In whatever areas of the curriculum where they will not be the same.
Before the end of the school year?
Will that be included before the end of this school year?
I think as you approach the budgeting, it will be a factor in your considerations.
Thank you.
Mrs. Krieger, that's a good point, and I would think that whatever comes forward isn't all Dr. Bose's responsibility, but also secondaries and Donna Brown, our science supervisor. So I think there's a team of people that need to come forward with that answer, and I trust that they will. Okay, Board, I believe thank you, Mrs. Krieger. I believe we've heard comments from all board members. We do have a motion, and we have a second. I do believe I heard variance in opinion, so we're going to have a poll vote. Secretary Lear, if you would.
This is for the adoption of Plan B1. Mr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Krieger?
No.
Mr. Mosey?
Yes.
Mrs. Scherer?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Weitz?
No.
I have 4 voting yes. I have 3 voting no. I'm sorry, madam. I saved you to last.
I knew that.
My apologies. Ms. Mingle?
Yes.
I now have 5 voting yes and 3 voting no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Board. Dr. Bose.
Recommended for the board's approval tonight is the program of studies for the 96, 97 school year for our middle schools, and the board has heard a report and engaged in discussion previously, so this is recommended for your approval.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And I will remember comments around. We'll start with Mr. White this side.
No comments.
Mr. Schilling.
No comment.
Mrs. Scher?
Yes, I'd just like Dr. Bond to clarify, since we spent so much time on the 7th and 8th curriculum, particularly focusing on the teaming aspect and the reinstatement of honors. We sort of overlooked 9th grade completely. As we've heard, there's been some rumors or some misunderstandings out there, both among our staff, among teachers. Can you tell me, is there any change? Has there been any elimination of any programs, either in the implementation process, meaning block scheduling, our gifted program, or our course of studies?
There has been no change since our original conversation relative to 9th grade. And in that original conversation, we said that 9th grade will remain as it is this year for the next school year, and that is reflected in the program of studies. I have met with the secondary principals today, and I addressed a number of issues that I had raised with me, and I've also asked them to make sure that the counselors, the teachers, and the students were aware that there were no changes and to clear up that miscommunication for whatever reason.
But since the discussion hasn't really revolved around the 9th grade, you say that there is no course elimination in this program of studies. So we've asked that, we've cleared the air of that. And I hope that we can get together very shortly and discuss exactly what the curricular needs are for Penfield and Pembroke, as we all feel challenged to meet the timelines of September.
I have a series of meetings scheduled with a number of people in the middle schools, Penfield and Pembroke, and that is on the table. And I will be bringing that forward as quickly as I can.
Okay. I'd like you all to know I'm not comfortable with 9th grade being divided up. It's been all in one location. We've always had a comprehensive course of studies. But I say again, sometimes you have to, your opportunity to actually react is too late to really react as you may have with a couple years advance and, at another time in another place. So I support this one. I thank Dr. Vaughn.
Mr. Allen?
Nothing.
Mr. Miller?
No comment.
Mrs. Krieger?
Well, my only point of clarification is we've just established 3 junior highs. I'd like to recommend that for next year, not this year, not 96, 97, 97, 98, it would be most helpful for me as a board member to have a course program of studies presented and call it what it is. We have 3 junior highs now. These are not middle schools. These are junior highs. And I'd like the program of studies to reflect that, and the academic program of studies for the high school to accurately reflect the grades that will be attending at that level too. That's my only comment.
Mr. Mosey?
No comment.
Okay, gentlemen, I have no real comment, other than to say that program of studies is certainly far more sophisticated than it was years ago, and I believe there has been some building of appropriate courses in 7, 8, and 9, and Dr. Bond, to whatever extent you've had your hand in them, I thank you. So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, Dr. Those were both yours, weren't they, Dr. Bond? A and B? You know where you're going now?
Yes, ma'am.
You know where you're headed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Bose, as a point of presidential pro tem privilege, I'd like to take C and place it out to the board. I realize, board members, from talking to some of you, that there is a desire, possibly a consensus desire, that C be rolled over into March, that it be placed into the work session, that it have accompanied by green sheets, and that those specific areas be developed by finance. And I guess finance, we're going to need some legal advice in that interim. And if that's okay, Mr. Mosey, do I have your approval?
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes, but I still have a question.
Certainly. Mrs. Scher? I'll come back, Mr. Allen. Mr. Scher?
Consensus, we don't need his opinion.
But we're going to take it anyway.
It's a question.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. White?
It is definitely a work session issue.
It's a biggie, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, Mr. Allen, your questions.
Yes, on C3, where it says to cover delayed payments to contractors. If I read that, I'm thinking we're not paying contractors. And I hope I'm reading it wrong.
No, Mr. Allen, what we had discussed before is that if the money runs out in May or June, and there hadn't been a decision made on a financing proposal, that we would run into the problem of delaying payment to contractors. At that point, that is not happening as of yet.
Is that fine, Mr.
When
Allen?
do we have to know so that that does not happen?
When Art and I had worked on a drawdown schedule for what he saw as the Pendale project finishing and with the money that was left, we looked at sometime in May, depending on the speed that the contractors both get the work finished and get their invoices in.
If we make a decision in March at the action meeting to borrow the money, will we have it in time?
Yes, we will.
So that we are not late with
If
any
that's the board's
bill.
decision, that will be in
Excuse me,
fine
Mr.
shape.
Allen, this would be coming in my summary of our meeting with Mr. Kelly, but however, there are other funds available which are not encumbered, which are not formally committed, which would carry us through this drawdown, and in fact, if you recall, we are still seeing bills from Bridle Path and Walton Farm. In many cases, you're receiving billing many, many months after the end of construction, so while we can review the drawdown, there are other alternatives that does buy us significantly more time than the March or April deadline.
Thank you.
But perhaps we'll resolve that at the next work session.
Mr. Kelly, please back up Mrs. Scher's comments with a green sheet with those details.
Yes,
Her
we will.
information is critical and important, and you need to back it up in a green sheet.
Fine.
Okay, Board, that's what we will do, and please take note, Secretary Weir, that this will be rolled over into the work session agenda for March. Okay, Dr. Bose.
Next for the board's consideration is a recommendation that you approve accepting two gifts, one for Gwinnett Square and one for Montgomery Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Hill, a second by Scher. Is there any discussion starting to the left, Mr. Mosey? No. Krieger? Hill?
No.
Allen?
No.
Scher? Schilling? White? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Thank you. Dr. Bose.
Next to personnel, there is one appointment to be made, one professional position listed on your agenda. It is recommended that you approve that appointment.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion by Hill, a second by Scher. Any comments starting to the right, Mr. White?
No.
Around? Mr. Hill? Mrs.
No.
Krieger? Mr. Mosey?
Are we talking about Deborah Dobbs?
Yes.
Just one question. Why is she coming on board as a substitute?
She's not coming on board as a substitute. She has been there all year long. The person that she was out for has decided to stay for the remaining part of the year.
Is this a sabbatical replacement?
No, it's a maternity.
So what happens to her status after this year? She's a permanent teacher now?
Oh, no. She is a sub.
Okay,
So her contract expires at the end of the year.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Mosey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
There are 5 support staff appointments recommended for your approval from the bottom of page BA2 to the top of page BA3.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Hill, a second by Allen. Any comments? Mr. Mosey, to your side.
No question.
Around this way.
Madam President, if I may make a correction. If you counted, you would wonder why I said 5. Kara Schoenmeyer is really a resignation. Clerical error on our part. She should be moved for your next consideration to the resignation section. So please excuse that. Make that note in your papers.
Mr. Hill, can we have an amendment to your motion?
My motion is so
Yes, sir.
modified.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
Next, members of the board, there are 3 resignations of support staff, beginning and including Schoenmeyer, and going to the top of page BA4.
Have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Krieger, second by Mrs. Scher. Any discussion?
I just have a question. Dr. Bose, how do you pronounce that young man's name?
I'm not sure. There's some missing vowels.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah,
She has a vowel.
Kretschmar.
So that's not a typo?
Kretschmar.
That's not a typo?
It's like an H or something that should be in it.
It does look to me like there's a couple things missing.
I was just curious.
And we didn't let him buy a vowel, right?
I think we could find out.
Okay, any comments, Mr. Hill?
No.
Mr. Allen, around?
No,
Mrs.
I feel
Scher,
bad for
Schilling?
this poor person.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
One salary change recommendation for a professional staff member is recommended for your approval.
So moved.
Motion by Allen.
Second.
Second by Mosey. Any discussions to the right? Whites? Around? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
And there are 8 resignations of support staff, beginning at the mid part of page BA4 to the top of page BA5.
Resignation?
Salary changes. Beg your pardon. Let me correct it.
Look at here.
It's been a long day.
So moved.
Motion by Hill, is there a second? Second by Mosey. Questions to the left, starting with Mosey?
Yes, one question. Robert Brody, is that a new position or is he filling Mr. Masmano's position?
No, actually, he has been with us for about a year and a half, I guess, on a contract basis. He is filling a position that had been vacated earlier by another person who was out on maternity leave and then did not come back.
Thank you.
That is a budgeted position.
Thank you.
Mrs. Krieger?
Well, then, relative to that, Mr. Schmidt, there was an article in the paper last week about, I think it was 2 positions.
Yes.
Is this one of them?
No, this is not one of them. There are 2 other positions that we've advertised for that are budgeted. They're part of our technology plan.
There are a total of 4 positions.
That is correct.
This is filling one of those 4 positions.
4 of the new ones,
No,
David?
they're not new. There are 4, there were 2
One
new
position.
positions, there were 2 old positions, there are a total of 4 positions, of which this is filling one
Okay.
vacancy.
Well, what are we filling, David? Is this an
Yeah,
old position or a new position?
This is the old position.
This is the old.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hill?
No.
Mr. Allen?
No.
Mrs. Scher?
Only question regarding the general positions that are now being interviewed for. Have we drawn up job descriptions and qualifications? Have they been added to our personnel job directory? Could I please have copies, please? I mean, we did get a brief summary, I believe, of what it was expected, but it wasn't formalized. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scher. Mr. Schilling? Mr. Whites?
No.
Mr. Whites, thank you for your clarification on these matters. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
On page BA5, there is
Nothing.
I'm on the substitute list now.
Yes, you are.
Thank you for your help. It is recommended you approve the additions to the list of professional and support staff substitutes for the current school year.
So moved.
Motion by Krieger.
Second.
Second by Schilling. Comments turn to the right. Mr. White?
No.
Around? This way?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
The last personnel recommendation has to do, again, with additions to the extra duty assignments for the current school year. It is recommended that you approve that addition.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Allen, second by Scher. Any comments starting to the left, Mr. Mosey?
No.
No,
The only thing that,
no. No, you don't. Be quiet.
Okay. We have detention. It'll be at the Sumney West Tavern. Go ahead, Mrs. Krieger.
I have, every month that I've been here so far, I have major questions about this extra duty pay. I have voted no consistently for all of it. So I am asking tonight that you, I guess it would be Dr. Bond. I would appreciate the opportunity to come in and discuss with you at length what this means, because I can't, looking at this sheet, Dr. Bond tells me nothing. as to what I'm approving.
He would look forward to that.
So, I will say that. I will vote the same way tonight as I have previously.
I will work very hard to change that vote, Mrs. Krieger.
Okay. Mr. Hill?
Yes, nothing, no more.
Mr. Allen?
Absolutely not.
Is it sure?
No, only to state that I think that's Fred Schmidt's department.
Well, we'll
And Dr. Braun is this is a contractual expense.
Learn how to say no. I agree with Mrs. Chair.
But if you guys promise to be good to me for a while, I'll take care of the explanation.
Mrs. Krieger, you'll be assigned Dr. Vaughn. If he needs a backup, he will call on Mr. Schmidt.
Backup?
Well, you always claimed to be varsity, didn't you, Mr. Vaughn? Dr. Vaughn?
Whatever.
Whatever.
Right there behind you.
As a scrub.
Always
Mr.
volunteer
Schilling.
for my backup.
Mr. Whites, are you sure, Mr. Whites? Take your shots, everyone.
I'm definitely sure. No comment.
Okay, we're calling for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
We have a nay for Vaughn and Krieger. Okay. Dr. Bose?
We're at the top of BA6 now. Personnel is over. This is a recommendation for you to approve several student travel plans.
Several?
16.
That's several.
To be precise.
I'll make a motion to accept all 16.
Second.
Exception.
She didn't even call me.
She did, she asked for a motion.
Can we get just a little order? I'm so glad to see so many people laughing at one time. I'm just thrilled, but can we get a grip? We do have a motion, and we do have a second. Question starting to the right, Mr.
We can
White.
separate if you want to.
No question.
No question.
Mr. Sher.
Well, I do, but I think I'll hold this one. I don't want to ruin the mood.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I'm going to take you up on that.
I have a question about every item.
All 16?
All 16.
No question.
Mr. Hill.
No.
Mrs. Krieger.
Just a suggestion.
Okay.
Oh, don't mold, Dennis. I would really appreciate it, Dr. Bose, if in your descriptions about who's going and who we're paying for to go, I would really appreciate knowing of the chaperones who go, or the coaches who go, or the, of the band participants or where. I would really like to know how many of the people who go are paid staff members, or parents. I just think I would prefer a little bit better breakdown, so that I can justify in my mind what truly is no additional cost to the district. So that's just a point of suggestion.
Okay. Mr. Mosey.
One question, maybe I guess it should be addressed to Dennis. I see it that the cost to the district is going to be $15,206. That's with substitute time and everything else. Is this money budgeted?
Where are you, Mr. Rossi?
Oh, it's all budgeted.
Oh, the total.
It's all
Yes,
budgeted.
Mr. Rossi, it's all budgeted under
Thank you.
student activities.
Thank you. That's all.
One question, Dr. Bond, as you have referred many times to the bond plan. I'm hoping that the bond plan is not keeping as many children out of the building as possible in the high school on trips such as this to draw down on capacity. Can you assure us that this is not the bond plan?
I'm afraid I can't assure you that.
We may have a problem.
I mean, look at how many are missing.
He may be one of the chaperones, and we don't even know it.
It's probably that Hawaii conference.
That's one of the reasons Mrs. Krieger's question bothers me.
Okay, we could call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Thank you.
I would point out, Madam Chair, that one thing that the field trips does represent as an initiative, and you will notice how many of them are approved significantly in advance, and that's in response to the board's interest in having these things done beforehand rather than after the fact.
That's been noted, thank you.
That's an accomplishment.
And that is appreciated. And that didn't happen before, and we thank you.
Team effort. The next item is information for your use on vandalism reports. We have BA 10 for that purpose.
So moved.
It's not a motion.
Not a motion.
Oh, it isn't, sorry.
Sorry.
Be quiet.
Now you're under other business. I think A and B are for Mr. Kelly to address.
Yes, they are. Mr. Kelly, if you would.
I recommend approval for the transfer of $1,750 from the general fund to the North Penn School District General Authority.
We have a motion by Schilling. Do we have a second? Second by Mosey. Questions to the right, Mr. Whites.
None.
Schilling. Sure. Allen.
No.
Around.
No.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you.
I recommend approval for the collection of school taxes by the appointed tax collector of Montgomery Township with the following caveat. In the original intergovernmental agreement that I sent, I would like to change and have the board's approval to change item number 6 to read as follows. The tax collector and the township shall maintain accurate records of all expenses incurred in the collection of real estate taxes on an annual basis. The tax collector shall collect and maintain a separate account in the name of the school district. All interest earned will be credited to the school district. Tax collector shall not commingle tax receipts with other township funds.
Okay, Mr. Kelly, we do not have that language.
No, he's
No.
not giving it.
You're giving it to us now.
I'm giving it to you now.
Okay, please, we need a
This was
copy to all
draft
board
that came
members.
today.
Today. We need a copy for all board members, and please, I need a copy from Mrs. Hatfield to attach to the minutes because of that change.
I'm going to.
Yes, in consultation with Mr. Parrish.
Surely, surely. Okay, we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Mosey, a second by Mrs. Krieger. To the left, any questions around?
No.
All the way around?
No.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed would say nay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess, again, we have a President Pro Tem privilege in this, in category C here, item C. It's to consider an appointment of general counsel at the hourly rate of $85 effective immediately. You see, it's a consideration and not a recommendation. Before you is sample language that was provided to you by the board secretary in the event that any board member wishes to place a motion on the floor. Of course, it requires a second, and of course, it requires 5 votes for approval. In the event that 5 votes are not available this evening for anybody suggested, and it would be my suggestion that this matter would recycle over into March's work session and that the secretary duly advertise for a special action meeting for that evening. If there are 5 affirmative votes tonight, then Secretary Ware, you are asked and assigned to contact that party first thing tomorrow morning. Is there a recommendation from the floor?
Motion. I recommend appointment of the law firm of Michelle Bartle, Yanoff, and Dooley to provide service as general counsel with Frank R. Bartle to serve as primary counsel at the rate of $85 per hour effective immediately.
I second the motion.
We have a motion by Scher and a second by Krieger. Are there any comments before we take a roll vote on this? We'll start to the left. Mr. Mosey.
No comment.
Mrs. Krieger. No. Mr. Hill.
No.
Mr. Allen.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I have to express my dismay that we did not have as one of our requirements that this person have experience in school law. I find that hiring someone to be general counsel to the largest school district in Montgomery County, one of the largest in the state, that we did not, as a majority, see fit to hire somebody that knows what they're doing here. And as much as I am known as in the minority right now, I have to live with this situation, but I just think it's the wrong way to do it, and I had to make it known. Secondly, I would like to thank Charles Potash for his many, many, many years of fine service to this school district. He has served us well, and I wish him good luck in the future. Thank you, Mr. Potash.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Scher? Comments around? Mr. Schilling? Mr. Whites?
It's not at the risk of being repetitive. I will be repetitive. I also let it be known very early on that I felt that school law expertise was a fundamental requirement for the selection of our solicitor. I remain disappointed that this board did not feel that they should look for school law expertise as a primary consideration. I felt that it was an extremely important requirement. Time will only tell if we made the right decision. I, too, would also like to thank Charles Potash for his decades of expert professional services to the North Penn School District, and also wish him and his firm well.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've all had a chance to make comments. We are in need of a roll call vote, obviously. Mr. Weir, if you would, please.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. Mosey?
No.
Mrs. Scher?
Yes.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Whites?
No.
Ms. Mingle?
No.
I have 5 voting yes and 3 voting no.
Okay, Secretary Weir, if you would, tomorrow make a notice to Frank Bartle that he is in fact, by that vote, been assigned as Solicitor of General Counsel of this district. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have to bring to your attention immediately, in light of the vote that you have all taken, that there are matters that are carried over that I do not believe that Solicitor Bartle is going to be able to handle. First, there is a matter of a labor case that is scheduled for arbitration tomorrow. There is no way a vote tonight could have allowed anybody to prepare themselves for arbitration tomorrow, and it is my desire to see, and we don't need a vote if you just approve, to allow the Potash firm to finish up with that matter as they had intended to do. Also, there's a second matter of which we cannot provide you great detail because of this special ed case. It is a very serious one. Mrs. Clark has spent an intensive amount of time with other staff members in handling. It's of a very private nature. It has been handled in a very delicate way by Solicitor Roos, and he should be kept on that case in the best interest of this district and in the best interest of that child. And I ask that you be sensitive and allow that to happen. I think these are ongoing cleanup type of activities that shouldn't require a vote, but if you feel there's an issue here, then let's have it. If not, we will just continue on with the work that is being done.
Ms. Mako, just
Yes.
for clarification, are these the only 2 cases that Mr. Potash needs
No.
to wrap up for us?
No, these are the ones that are of eminent need in light of tonight's vote, that there is no way that Mr. Bartle could have picked up on these. We also have, in addition, 40 assessment appeal cases at various stages of litigation. Now, it is my understanding from a majority of board members that there may be a desire to, in fact, RFP for tax assessment attorney work, and that the Potash firm should continue until such a time as this school district, this board, assigns that work to.
I disagree. I don't know that that's the case. I only heard that we would be forwarding all action after general counsel. There will be attorney-to-attorney discussions. I would certainly hope that is usually professional courtesy in such a transition. And then there will be professional decisions made by those who can judge the intricacies of the case. Then, as it said to me, there are some that could be moved over, and others that have gone too far. They're in the court of the appeals process.
I guess what needs to be asked of Mr. Potash out of those 40 cases, Mr. Potash, how many of them are destined to go to the final stages of litigation within the next 30 days?
I don't believe there's, at this, I don't have the cases in front of me. I did provide you with a list where we met, and I discussed the litigation aspect with you. I believe the exact number is 39. There are 3 matters which I have sent to Dennis Kelly which have to be addressed. I mean, we've got to move them along. One, I'm waiting for the approval. All the other taxing districts have approved the settlement. I'm waiting for this school district to advise me of that. There are 2 other matters that should be addressed immediately we're waiting for information on. But to tell you when the cases will come up to trial or what they will in the next 30 days, I can't tell you without looking at our schedule in the office. But there are 39 in various stages of litigation. There had been 90. To give you an updated report, 50 have been disposed of, and there are these 39 remaining.
Since our meeting, 50 have been disposed of?
No,
Okay.
during the course of all these appeals, no.
Okay,
I'm
well-
talking about settled and terminated.
I think that...
I'm just giving an update, but these 40 are that remain, but they're in various stages, and some of them are pretty important cases.
These cases have to be gathered up, and then they have to be transferred to the attorney that this board would choose. At that time, I believe that Mrs. Krieger, I think you're right that in the next 30 days, such a transfer will happen. But I don't believe that transfer could happen tonight. And that we are in need of more information forthcoming, particularly from you, Mr. Kelly, in regards to these matters. And also, since we have a general counsel appointed this evening by 5 of you, and
I have with
work
me
can start.
an updated report that I'll leave with Mr. Kelly for your edification. To sit here and go over each and every case.
No, I didn't want you to do that. I just,
I came prepared to provide Mr. Kelly for an orderly transition
Madam President.
of the matters.
Yes, Mr.
Mr.
Manager.
Potash, I was under the impression there were 29 cases that were pending and 3 were pretty close to being, now you're saying there's 39 cases?
The total cases, remember, the last time I met with you, more
Yes.
were being filed. From what I gather from the printout that I got from the office today, there are 39 cases, and I'll give you them right now.
We have 10 more that
pass
have
them
come
on.
forward in the last month?
39.
We have 10 more that have come forward in the last month?
I guess there have been.
That would be
Yeah.
after the Sunday. There's
I
probably
also-
2 that have come in the past couple of days. If, Charlotte may not even have those.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring this around. Obviously, within the next 30 days, these will either be in the hands of the Potash firm, the Bartle firm, or a firm yet to be appointed to do this sort of work. It will be resolved, and it won't be here tonight, I'm sure.
The key word is an orderly transition.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
May
Wilson.
we move on the 2 specific issues without the broader elements that we've been discussing here? That
course.
you are asking us, please, would you make a motion for those 2 specific exceptions? That's right, for the specific exception that you're seeking right now to authorize Mr. Potash to serve as legal counsel in those
you
2
don't have to make
cases?
a motion, do you?
I don't think you need a motion for that.
You don't
They just
have a motion
continue
for
their-
that.
Or
Just
withdraw.
continue.
No,
It's an order of
no.
transition.
Let me point out, I submitted a resignation effective immediately upon the appointment of my successor. And I also pledged to do everything I can to make an orderly transfer. I'm trying to fulfill that commitment. You have taken action this evening on 2 matters which have to be addressed. That was the special education matter and a labor matter, which is coming tomorrow. There are these matters in litigation which my authority to represent you would cease tonight with the appointment of Mr. Bartle, unless affirmative action is taken authorizing me to continue in these
Then I
matters.
seek a motion that, in fact, the Potash firm be kept on to handle the matters of a arbitration case for tomorrow, February 16th, and a second matter of special education scheduled for a hearing before a hearing officer on February 26th. Can I have a motion, please?
A second.
And a second. Mosey has the motion, and Schilling had the second. Is there any further discussion on those 2 specific matters?
Only do we have an established rate on file?
My rate in my
Hourly
office,
rate.
if you're asking my rate, our rate on litigation.
Mr. Wheeler, that's been discussed?
Yeah.
Let the Solicitor Potash finish, please.
Our rate on litigation depends on who's working with it. My rate is $150 an hour. Mr. Cantor's rate, a partner, senior member of the firm, is $150 an hour. If we have less senior people working, the hourly rate is different. But you can consider, because these are important cases with Mr. Cantor working on them, it's $150 an hour.
Shall we include that rate as part of the motion?
Could you amend your motion, Mr. Mosey?
So amended.
And your
So-
amendment, Mr. Schilling? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Thank you. Thank you, Solicitor. Also, we need approval for the approximately 40 assessment appeal cases to be transferred in an orderly fashion, be it to Mr. Bartle, be it to an attorney selected by this board within the next 30 days. In the interim, that the Potash firm is to continue the ongoing work of assessment until the board decides at that time.
So moved.
Second.
What is,
One moment, Mrs. Sharp. We have a motion by Schilling. We have a second by Whites. We'll start to the right for comments. Mr. Whites, do you have any?
Again, I seconded this motion to make sure that we have an orderly transition
Thank you.
of all of the school district's business to attorneys that we may choose.
Mr. Schilling, any comments? Mrs. Sharp?
explanation exactly of the intent of the motion? Mr. White?
An orderly transition of the cases now pending that involve this school district to other attorneys. I don't believe that we serve our best interest by just cutting off our current representation without authorizing our past solicitor to inform other attorneys about our business so that they can carry on from there.
But who's choosing these? How would you disseminate this through other attorneys? I don't
Is it
quite
my
understand that
understanding,
notion.
let me frame this properly. Is it my understanding that, number one, I continue following the directive of this board when an assessment appeal is to be heard before the Board of Assessment Appeals, we are to continue for commercial and industrial properties, having a representative of our office attend and then issue a report. This has been the ongoing directive from this board to my firm. That's the first thing that I have to address. And I think I explained that to you the evening that we met and we discussed the litigation. That directive has been given. We attend and all the assessment appeal hearings regarding commercial and industrial property when they are scheduled before the Board of Assessment Appeals. In addition, every time there's an assessment appeal filed to the Court of Common Pleas, there are obligations on our part to file an entry of appearance to protect the interests of the school district, or to file an answer or a pleading. Now, within the 30 days, there's usually a 20-day period of which, or a 30-day period of which, those responses have to be filed, but they have to be filed. Are we to continue doing that as these appeals are filed? That's number two. Number three, we have these ongoing assessment appeals where lawyers contact us, the appraisers contact us, and we have the ongoing interplay in attempting to negotiate settlements or to continue with the discovery for these matters in the appeal process in the courts of common pleas. In addition, there may be settlement conferences scheduled by the courts that have to be attended by us. Now, are we to continue doing that? If you are intending us to continue doing that, that will take an affirmative vote of this board. Otherwise, at the moment that you have appointed your solicitor, all my authority ends at that point, except the two cases which you have authorized us to continue.
In summary, what we are seeking is permission for the Potash firm to continue with these cases in the next 30 days so that an orderly transfer can be made, whether it be to our general counsel or to a tax assessment attorney of choice by this board.
Right.
It will require another meeting. It will require another action. That this is a serious matter. It isn't a matter of handing over 40 sheets of homework. And I think all we want is for everybody's dignity and proper order to remain intact in this transfer.
Does that motion that was made and seconded cover what Mr. Potash just suggested to us?
Solicitor, do you believe that it did?
No, I was only authorized for the two specifically. I am to continue, our firm is to continue representing this district in all assessment appeal matters as they occur and those pending until our successor is appointed for each of these cases.
Okay, Solicitor, thank you. Mrs. Hatfield, would you give me the author of the motion and the second on this list?
Until we appoint some. Didn't you hear the rest of it? Until we appoint some.
The motion that we're on now, who gave me the first and the second?
Well, originally you went through and you had Mr. Potash would take care of the one tomorrow, plus the special ed one.
That's
and that was
done.
approved.
Right.
That
Correct.
section. Okay, then about the appeal cases.
Right.
Now, that was made by Mr. Schilling and seconded by Mr. Weiss.
And the motion
And
is?
that was for an interim, that Mr. Potash's firm would take care of these appeal cases up to 30 days to an orderly transition to take place.
Until such a time that a solicitor to handle these matters are assigned by this board. Anything else you'd like to add, Solicitor?
I would say that you would take the 30 days out and just put until a successor is appointed and the orderly transfer can be made.
Mr. Schilling, would you amend your motion?
Yes.
Mr. Weitz, would you amend your second? Okay, in light of that, any more comments around? We were coming around. Mr. Allen, were you finished with your comments?
No comment.
Mr. Hill?
I don't want to bring it up.
Mrs. Krieger?
I pass too.
Mr. Mosey?
I'm not too sure what we're, are we voting on the three issues that Mr. Potash brought up? Is that what we're?
No.
Are we voting on completing the work that Mr. Ruse is involved in?
No, we've already done that. On the labor case and on the special ed case, they're
Right.
already approved.
Okay.
We're talking about 3 conditions that the Potash firm
Yes.
is in need of.
I have no question.
To handle these assessment cases
I have
up
no
to the
question.
point where this board turns that over into the specific name.
Right,
of
I have
somebody
no
else's.
question.
Okay, just a point of clarification, just to make sure I'm not on the motion, just on the appointment of our new solicitor. It was my understanding during his interview process that this gentleman and his firm is very adept at real estate assessment. Am I wrong? Somebody please.
He's appointed for general
What I don't
counsel.
understand is
We
why
have
aren't
to
we
check
allowing
this
this
because it does.
transition to at least take place?
Okay, but Mrs. Sher, one moment.
Upon his
Miss-
advisement.
Mrs. Krieger, I believe all 4 firms said that they were capable of doing real estate and tax assessment work. They
Right.
all claimed to be able to do that work. My understanding that night, as I believe I handled it as a matter of personnel, was that this specific firm was voted on by 5 of you tonight for reasons of general counsel. And if I understood discussions that we have had in executive session, there is a desire to split up the work. And one of those areas to be split was tax assessment, there was bond counsel, etc.
I don't recall that, Mrs. Mingle. The only 2 areas that were separated
I do.
out were special ed that particular night.
That night, yes.
It was special ed
But we voted-
and labor relations, which was not decided upon that
Quite
night.
frankly,
Is that correct?
That's correct, but general counsel's up for hiring tonight. Special ed is up for hiring tonight.
Right. So what you're telling
But
me,
others' work were yet to be decided by this board, and that was matters that we're going to take another executive session
and
on.
it was going to be upon also the input and the recommendation of our new general counsel, was my understanding.
And he's not on till he's told, and would be included in
Okay.
executive session as we move ahead.
Fine.
That's correct.
Are we fine?
Yes.
You may call for the question.
Call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
No.
Nay, but based on.
Okay, roll call, please, Mr. Weir.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieger?
No.
Mr. Mosey?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher? No. Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. Weitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mingle?
Yes. Okay, thank you.
6-2.
Again, President's privilege, consider the appointment of Special Education Counsel at the hourly rate of $85 an hour, effective immediately. I'm in need of a motion. You have sample language before you.
Madam President, I would like to recommend the appointment of the law firm of Sweet, Stevens, Tucker, and Katz to serve as special counsel for special education, with Paul L. Stevens to serve as primary counsel at the rate of $85 per hour, effective immediately.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Mosey and a second by Schilling. We'll start to the left on comments. Mr. Mosey.
No comment.
Mrs. Krieger. No. Hill.
No.
Allen. Sure. Schilling, White. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Clerk goes.
Last recommendation of the evening, Madam Chair, is for the board to approve the contract with the Enrichment Workshop for operating the base program for the next school year.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Excuse me, I was talking to Secretary Weir. Who made the motion, please?
Daniel?
Don Hill, and the second was?
Mosey.
By Mosey, thank you. Any questions? We'll start to the right. Comments?
No.
White, Schilling. Sure.
I will be a dissenting vote on this, given the,
Please speak up, Mrs. Sher.
given that the information which I understood, a continuation of this company and without a bidding process is the issue. It is not a continuation of the firm or the company under this program, but rather the fact that the conditions have quite changed since I was last informed of what conditions would prevail if we were to forgive a bidding process, particularly the parents' rates. I am extremely concerned that we did not bid this out, and yet the increase that's being allowed is really actually going to hit the parents, and higher increases than any of the funding that we sought to bring in would ever matter, just because of the unit numbers. And I do have difficulty with that, such a high ceiling on parent rate increases.
Mr. Allen?
No.
Mr. Hill?
No.
Mrs. Krieger?
I will also be voting against this contract this evening for a couple of reasons. First of all, information that I specifically asked to have in regards to this contract was never provided for me by anybody serving on the board's committee to negotiate this contract, especially the staff development program that Mrs. Shaw has for her employees. I never saw that. I don't really know because of that, exactly what type of employees she is hiring or how she is developing her staff on a year-to-year basis. Also, it was my understanding that we were initially going to be charging $500 a year for her informational announcements. That's now been reduced to $200, and I find that a little questionable. Finally, I would like to reiterate to the members of the committee that negotiated this contract. I think it was pretty clear that we got into this situation because of a lack of time, another situation that's been dumped on our laps because of a lack of time, and I'm growing quite weary of it. I would like to suggest that this board undertakes the bidding process for this contract and the RFP process, and that we begin the undertaking of that in October of this year, and that we send to Mrs. Shaw a notice of that intent after the renewal of this contract tonight, as well as to the rest of the community. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Mosey.
I agree with Mrs. Krieger. I have received some inquiries and phone calls from members of the community, and I was one who did want to look and address this. However, due to constraints on time, because of the conditions in the contract, we didn't have time to address it as I felt that we should have. And I too would like to go along with the recommendation that we approve it, but with the proviso that we do address this early on next year. I don't want to be as affirmative as Mrs. Krieger in saying that we put it out for bid, but I think that we ought to look at it a little more closely next year. It's just unfortunate we didn't have the time. We're doing the best we can at this point in time, and I hope that we'll have enough time next year not next year, but next October to look this over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mosey. Good comments from both of you, Mrs. Krieger and Mr. Mosey. And Mrs. Hatfield, please allow the record to show that there is a desire by various members of the board that an early review, effective maybe September, October, be looked into on the base program, and that we not be stuck up to the last minute to review this account. And that I guess that too would be noted under Mr. Hill's committee. So thank you, both of you. We do have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Roll call, Mr. Weir.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes?
Mrs. Krieger?
No.
Mr. Mosey?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher?
Nay.
Mr. Schilling?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Yes.
Ms. Mingle?
Yes.
I have 6 voting yes and 2 voting no.
Thank you. Dr. Bose.
No further recommendations, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Kelly.
Mrs. Mangle, would you give me the liberty of a comment, please, before we move on?
Absolutely, Mr. Schmidt.
I really would feel remiss, I guess, if I didn't mention at this point in time that I've worked closely with Charles Potash for 22 years, and over the course of that time, and maybe not everybody appreciates it, but labor law is a very risky area. We have never, ever had to be subjected to any kind of major litigation. And I think that's directly related to the quality of the services that we've had from Charles. I think over that period of time, too, and I don't know what the exact number is, but I'd guess maybe 15 arbitrations with our professional staff. We've never lost a one. And again, I think that's directly related to the quality of the services. I just think it's important that somebody acknowledge the quality of the work that's been done here by Charles Potash, and I'm acknowledging it for 22 years, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Fred.
Mr. Schmidt, you probably have provided us with a better segue than we could have done ourselves. That we do have a plan tonight to show appreciation and a token gesture to Solicitor Potash, and at this time, then, since you have begun, Mr. Weir, if you would, please.
Thank you. The hour isn't as late as I had expected it to be, so perhaps I'll take a few more minutes than I might have if it were after midnight. Apologies to the moaners. It was 1959 when I was a young man just getting out of my military service, and I came to North Penn High School to be a social studies teacher. And on the 3rd day of my employment, the principal suggested that I should be the yearbook advisor. And I hadn't considered that as condition of employment, but I realized that it was smart for me to agree to be the yearbook advisor. One of my first responsibilities as yearbook advisor was to take photographs of the school board, which included the solicitor. I soon realized that Mr. Ray Pearlstein was a wonderful gentleman, who was held in high esteem by everyone. And I watched Ray Pearlstein from the firm with great interest because of his skill, because of his finesse, because of his class. And it wasn't long at all during school year 59-60 when Mr. Pearlstein introduced us to Mr. Potash. And Mr. Potash has become a regular fixture over these 36 years. Mr. Potash has been with us through 7 superintendents, through many, many school board members, most living and a few deceased. He was with us during the planning for the second high school, and through all of the construction and all of the growth and everything that happened during those years. Now, anyone who knows Mr. Potash knows that you can always have a good discussion and you can always have an interesting tug of war when you work with Mr. Potash. I think one of the compliments that I would extend to him, that if I were ever in big trouble, the first person I would call would be Charles Potash. On behalf of all those superintendents and all those board members, I would like to present this calligraphy that is done by the teacher in the evening school program. To be of service is a solid foundation for contentment in this world. And we thank you for all your good service. Thank you, Charles.
Mr. Potash, if you would, address the community.
Wasn't expected. I'm very grateful. It was a wonderful experience these past 36 years. I've worked with some wonderful people. Fred was one of the best and most honorable persons I've ever worked with. Judy was just a wonderful, as the special education field developed. Art Wood, probably the best in the field. This school district is so lucky to have the professional staff that it has, that I can only foresee some wonderful things happening to this school district. When I first came, there were 8 separate school districts, that's what there were. And there was a joint board that operated under Articles of Agreement. And in '67, was the beginning of the North Penn school system as you see it today. And it's wonderful to think about in terms of enrollment and growth and what the future holds. And it's wonderful to read in the newspaper about the marching bands and the football team and all these wonderful things that have happened with the students in your school district. And it's wonderful to feel that you've been part of this and helped in the process. And it's a humble feeling to know that it's a humble feeling to know that life goes on without you, and this school district will be just as great, in fact, probably greater in the years to come. But it's also gratifying to know that there was an opportunity that you could have shared in the growth of the district and what it is today. And I guess that's all I can say. I just want to thank you for the opportunity that I had of just giving whatever I had and what I had learned in helping this school district grow. I followed a wonderful human being, and as characterized by Ken Weir, and it would be remiss if I didn't mention Ray Pearlstein, who was my predecessor. And our firm did represent the school district for many, many, many years before I came on the scene in 1960. And he was my mentor, and this was his favorite district. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of both the firm and on behalf of Mr. Pearlstein. And I guess that's all I can say. Thank you very much. Ken, thank you for the very, very kind words.
Solicitor, thank you for your kind words in regards to the staff here. And it is my personal desire that you know that I wish you good health, prosperity, and peace to you and Mrs. Potash. And may God be with all of us.
Same to you, Mrs. Mayor.
Mr. Kelly.
Financial report for the month of January 1996. We had cash receipts for the month in the amount of $2,315,905.05. Receipts year to date, $87,420,012.21. Disbursements for the month, $7,311,286.49. Disbursements year to date, $56,964,568.80. Investments as of January 31st, $40,636,982.72.
Thank you, sir. Budget transfers, Mr. Kempis.
I recommend approval of the budget transfers for the 95-96 fiscal year in the amount of $47,641.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mosey, a second by Schilling. Thank you. Comments around. We'll start to the left, Mr. Mosey.
No question.
Mrs. Krieger. Mr. Hill?
No.
Mr. Allen? Mr. Chair? Mr. Schilling? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
I recommend approval of disbursements for the month of January in the amount of $7,797,237.98, and approval of the disbursements for the month of February in the amount of $435,404.49.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mosey, second by Allen. Comments around, starting with Whites. Around.
No.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
Food service report
Please.
for the month of January. We had total income in the amount of $315,118.14. Raw food costs in the amount of $121,645.11, which gave us a gross profit on sales of $193,473.03. Our operating costs for the month were down due to the closings for the snow, down to $122,161.04. And to Mrs. Urban's credit, we had a net profit for the month of $71,311.99, which gives us a year-to-date profit of $130,109.85.
Okay, thank you, sir. And Mrs. Irwin, we thank you again, as we do each month. We see you in the audience. Dr. Bose, federal programs?
Wait,
Oh, do we? I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to make a comment, because
Sure.
just for point of clarification, is Ms. Zervin the Director of Food Services?
She's the coordinator.
She's the coordinator?
Yes.
Okay.
Same
I'm
thing.
sorry, I was under the assumption that she was the administrator in charge of food services.
She's as close
She
as we
is.
get.
Well,
Well, then why are you giving the food services report every month? Isn't she
She's
not
food
capable
service.
of doing that?
He
food
enjoys
service
it.
comes under me.
Oh, you mean you're still?
Do we,
I mean, she's just doing such a great job, and it's nothing against you, Dennis. I just think that, you know.
Mrs. Irwin,
the district is
Mrs. Irwin,
entitled
please
to know
stand
who
up.
Dottie Irwin is.
There's Dottie Irwin.
How are we doing with the tape?
Very, very
Do
good.
you understand what I'm saying? I mean, it wouldn't take any, I know, she doesn't need a seat at the dais every month, but,
That's the
you
federal
know, to
program.
come to the podium in case
Yeah.
you do have questions.
That would force her to have to be here every
Then it
month.
wouldn't
She
be
is
fun
here
anymore.
every month, Dennis.
But it won't be
She
any
doesn't
fun
always
that
have to
way.
stay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're very close. We're almost time to go home. Please. Thank you, yes. Some support in the audience. Federal programs, Dr. Bose.
No report.
Thank you. Solicitors report.
No report.
Thank you, sir. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.